Chapter 929. It was fine for the studios that already had businesses in their hands, but it was the studios that had their businesses in the 10 main cities that exploded instantly. Ing-Chi had snatched the first opportunity, and there was no way they could argue. These 10 main cities belonged to 4 studios, and each of them had 2 cities. The 4th studio was in a miserable state. All 4 of the main cities should have been theirs, but the players were already happily working on it. They did not even know when Yun Teng's development would reach them. These 4 studios were the first to get angry, and then all the other studios started to get angry. Because the development of the 100 years of statecraft was not done by one studio at a time, each studio had already obtained 2 or 3 main cities and had their first bite. Then, they continued to wait for the development progress. As a result, all the studios still had undeveloped main cities in their hands. Originally, they did not think that there would be competitors, so they were not in a hurry. However, now that Ing-Chi had suddenly appeared and snatched 10 main cities in one go, how could the studios not be anxious? Development and teaching, these 2 parts were carried out separately. Now that the studios knew that Ing-Chi had already started teaching in these 10 main cities, their development work had naturally left these 10 main cities and moved elsewhere. Everyone's interests were being further infringed. No one knew which main city would be the first to be developed by Ing-Chi, so at this time, they were scrambling to ask Yun Teng to develop first for them. While they were fighting with Yun Teng, some studios had already started to contact Ing-Chi to see if there was a possibility of cooperation. They mainly did not have the resources to develop efficient leveling methods. Now that Yun Teng and Ing-Chi had them, it did not matter which side they cooperated with. Although they had an agreement with Yun Teng first, they did not expect this situation at that time, so there was no clause in this regard. Moreover, now that Ing-Chi had intervened, their interests could not be guaranteed. Even if it could not be said that it was Yun Teng's fault, it was not good for Yun Teng to use this agreement as an excuse. The bowl that you gave to others was smashed, and you still want them to hold the broken bowl to see if there were any leftovers? That did not make sense. Unparalleled Wonder was an old veteran in the studio, and he had seen all kinds of situations. When a workshop came looking for him, regardless of whether they were familiar or not, he treated them cordially. He talked about everything under the sun, about life, and about ideals. He just didn't talk about the most efficient way to level up. None of the heads of the studios were rookies. Seeing Matchless Wonder's attitude, they knew what was going on. They didn't try to pry or ask any questions. Instead, they threw out a proposal on how to distribute the profits. The thinking of each studio was relatively simple. Yun Teng and Ing-Chi had the resources in their hands, so they would definitely be the ones to eat the meat. They could only drink the soup, so they didn't care too much about the meat in the soup. As long as it was tasty, it would be fine. If there wasn't even enough to quench their thirst in the end, it would be a great loss. Seeing the various olive branches extended by his peers, Matchless Genius stopped beating around the bush and started to discuss in detail one by one. Everyone was anxious. Seeing Matchless Genius Ying's unhurried manner, they became even more anxious. Without any bargaining chips, they could only remain in such a perturbed position. Matchless Hero was anxious as well. 10 main city training areas? In fact, they hadn't developed that many yet. They had only just found Qin-Chi. They still needed time to communicate, win him over, negotiate the terms, and sign the contract. Out of the 10 main cities, only 4 of them had developed 2 leveling areas. Qin-Chi and his team were still working hard on the remaining ones. Ing-Chi's advertisement didn't mean much to the players because Qin-Chi would definitely be able to complete the development of the 10 cities during the agreed teaching period. However, to the other studios, it was a successful smoke bomb. Everyone was confused and thought that the 10 cities were no longer in their hands. They were going to invade their territories, so they all came looking for Ing-Chi. Matchless Genius dared to use this smoke bomb because he was sure that Qin-Chi had the real deal. He was sure that he wouldn't make a loss this time. From this perspective, he wasn't in a hurry. He dared to use this smoke bomb. He was anxious. He was anxious to see if he could use this opportunity to make a comeback. He didn't want to make a lot of money, but he wanted Yun Teng to make as little as possible. When Yun Teng announced the efficiency leveling method, Matchless Genius saw many things clearly. Yun Teng was only a second-tier studio. How could they have the ability to poach all of In-Chi's first-tier and second-tier players? At that moment, he understood that In-Chi had the backing of such a big deal. Yun Teng's foundation was definitely not as strong as In-Chi's. In the current situation, In-Chi would make more money if he took the advantage of the efficiency leveling method. If he didn't, he would lose out. However, Yun Teng had to succeed in this deal. If he didn't, he wouldn't be able to absorb all of the players poached from In-Chi. Matchless Genius only dared to use this smoke bomb to make a move. He wanted to use this as a signal to let all the studios know that In-Chi was still alive and that In-Chi was still a threat. Then, all the studios were pleasantly surprised. They thought that In-Chi would take advantage of their dilemma and kill them. They didn't expect that In-Chi would increase their profits. Yun Teng would take 30% of the profits, while In-Chi would only take 25%. This 5% made all the studios praise Matchless Genius for his loyalty. After that, they immediately turned to look for Yun Teng. Of course, they didn't immediately give up on working with Yun Teng. They only came to ask if Yun Teng wanted to be more loyal. No one was a fool, and no one was easy to deal with. Caught in the middle, the various studios, who originally had no resources in their hands, now realized that they themselves seemed to have become a kind of resource. So, they immediately began to use this to fight for more benefits. Matchless Genius understood why these guys would do this. While everyone was praising him for his loyalty, none of them immediately agreed to end the partnership. He knew that these guys would ask for Yun Teng's loyalty again. Of course, Yun Teng's people weren't stupid. They had expected this to happen. In-Chi's appearance was bound to reduce their profits. This was unavoidable. At this time, it was very important to deal with these cooperating studios properly. Yun Teng also wanted to have a bright future. He didn't want to disband on the spot. After a period of rapid back and forth, the workshops finally came to an agreement. Everyone sat down and discussed how to distribute the market for this efficiency leveling method. This suggestion wasn't made by Yun Teng or In-Chi, but by the remaining studios. As soon as it was made, these studios all agreed. The group of people who originally had no chance of earning this sum of money took advantage of the situation and snatched the dominant position. Under the objective conditions, they stood on the same side and joined forces with Yun Teng and In-Chi to form a tripartite confrontation. The meeting was held in Cloud City. Matchless Genius subconsciously suspected that there was a conspiracy here. Thousandly Drunk was extremely heaven-defying. These people were all from Cloud City, and in the eyes of unparalleled geniuses, Cloud City was basically an enemy city. However, everyone had a good reason for choosing this main city. Because in the current situation, only Cloud Peak City was completely neutral. Thousand Miles Drunk had directly opened up this main city for free. Moreover, unlike the other main cities that had opened up 2 areas, Cloud Cities was completely open. Everything that could be used in the level 40 leveling area had been used. It was already a place that they couldn't set foot in. Choosing to open up here was extremely fair and meaningful. Matchless Genius couldn't help but curse in his heart. This was a fucking negotiation. Why the fuck was there a need for fairness and meaning in choosing a location? Did it mean that choosing one of the 10 main cities that In-Chi had developed would tilt towards In-Chi's side? However, when he thought about it again, they were discussing business. If Qianli was drunk, what could they do? Would they put a sword to his neck and change his mind? That seemed like a joke. In the end, Matchless Genius agreed to this troublesome proposal and came to this fair and meaningful Cloud City for the meeting. Without a doubt, the bosses of these gaming studios were the wealthiest people in the game. If they couldn't even deal with a scroll that flew into Cloud City, they would be laughed at by their peers. In the end, the bosses arrived at Cloud City one by one and prepared to hold the first gaming studio conference in the history of the game. These bosses usually had some business dealings with each other. Most of them had a list of friends in the game, and they also had their offline contact information. However, this kind of meeting was very rare. Now that they were all gathered together, they introduced each other, and it was noisy for a while. Looking at the wealthiest people in the game, Some were well-dressed and had high-end equipment, some were tattered like beggars, and some were not even level 10 and were protected by PvP. Such a gathering of rich people with different appearances could only be seen in the game. However, it didn't matter if they were high-end, beggars, or protected by PvP. Their every movement and every word seemed like they were in control of the world. After all, the people in this room controlled the mainstream market in the game. Ahem, is everyone here? Let's start? The meeting was held in a real estate office of a certain gaming studio in Cloud City. As such, the boss became the first speaker. After everyone was present, he stood up and began to speak. This time, the bosses of the gaming studios all had benches to sit on. This showed the difference in status. For players like Overpowered, they had to either stand or sit on the ground. They didn't want to waste their energy on something as luxurious as benches. Well, the main purpose of this meeting is to discuss the issue of leveling efficiency. We won't be talking about the past in this meeting. Please leave the meeting to deal with those matters. Please cooperate, the first spokesperson said with a smile. That's right. Chapter 930. Everyone in the room was in the same industry. They might look like a family, but they were actually enemies. Usually, they fought each other openly and secretly. Today's allies could be tomorrow's enemies. There were too many conflicts between them. The spokesperson did not want everyone to discuss the past. He was not just referring to Yun Teng and Ying Qi. The conflict between them was just one of them. After everyone nodded in agreement, the spokesperson said, "Also, while we are discussing the proposal, can we stop the development work for both sides?" Of course, of course. Many people immediately nodded in agreement. Matchless Wonder was furious. What did stopping the development work have to do with them? What did these people mean for him and Yun Teng to agree? However, this did not make them feel at ease. These studios seemed to be on the same side, but in fact, there was a grudge between them. Especially now that Ying Qi had forcefully intervened in this business. Their previous agreement with Yun Teng was about to be reshuffled. Everyone would suspect that the other studios were secretly communicating with the two studios who had resources. While everyone was in the meeting, they would first take advantage of the fact that they had already developed the main city to sell. Stopping the development work meant that Yun Teng and Ying Qi would temporarily have no resources in their hands. Only then could everyone sit down and discuss how to divide the main city. They would not suspect that someone would stab them in the back. Nitrite looked at Matchless Wonder, who was sitting opposite him. Not long ago, he was still a nobody that Matchless Wonder would not even look at. But now, both of them were on equal footing. They had become the two giants in this meeting. In the words of Yun Teng, one of the three bosses of Yun Teng, this change in status alone made it worth it. Yun Teng was sitting next to Nitrite. This time, both of them had come together. At this moment, he was enjoying the feeling of being a giant in the industry. Nitrite Root could only smile wryly. Yun Teng was the biggest investor among the three of them, but he was the least knowledgeable. Fortunately, he knew very well that he would never force a layman to lead an expert. Usually, he would just join in the fun and come up with ideas. If he was lucky, he would be proud of himself if he hit the nail on the head. If he said something outrageous, he would just laugh and ignore it. Nitrite was in charge of the specific operations of Yun Teng Studio, and Wu Yi was relieved of a lot of the pressure after Ying Qi returned. Generally speaking, Nitrite was more in charge, so he attended the meeting. Yun Teng had nothing to do, so he came along. Wu Yi considered that it was a little sensitive to meet Unparalleled Wonder, so she didn't come. In fact, she was one of the three bosses of Yun Teng Studio, which had not been exposed yet. Matchless Wonder had a smile on his face. When Nitrite looked over, he nodded at Nitrite. He looked very friendly. However, he had poached almost all of Brave's first-rate and second-rate people for Nitrite Radical. How could he not know what kind of person Unparalleled Genius was? Nitrite didn't care about his friendly attitude at all, and asked, "What do you think, boss guy?" Matchless Wonder was, of course, reluctant to agree to this suggestion, because he knew that his development progress was far behind that of Yun Teng Studio. However, if he didn't stop, Yun Teng Studio wouldn't stop either, and the progress wouldn't be any closer, so he simply nodded, "I'm fine with it." But how should we supervise it? Nitrite said. He knew that he still had the upper hand in this business, so he wasn't afraid of stopping. However, he was afraid that if he stopped, the other party would continue to play tricks. That's easy. In fact, we all know that this high-efficiency leveling method can only be developed by certain people. Let's let both parties take a break and the development will naturally stop, right? The first spokesperson said. Then should we add the developer as a friend so that we can supervise? Matchless Wonder asked. Of course, the first spokesperson said. Then, should I and Bosya supervise each other, or should a third party supervise? Matchless Wonder asked. I think it's best if everyone supervises together, the first spokesperson said. Bosya, do you have any objections? Matchless Wonder smiled. No. Alright, this person on my side is called Chin-Chi. I'll contact him now, and anyone who wants to supervise can add him, Matchless Wonder said. 100 years of experience, Nitrite didn't say anything else. Very quickly, the two's names were added to everyone's friend list. I'll go back to the city and log off now, Matchless Wonder said. Same. Nitrite nodded. The conference room was silent and everyone's expression was dark. Nitrous Radical and Matchless Wonder knew very well that these two talents were treasures. The other studios would definitely regret not finding these two talents first. No one could guarantee that they wouldn't try to poach these two talents. However, Nitrite and Matchless Wonder weren't on their guard. They casually gave everyone a chance to interact with these two people. The two looked at each other. Although they were enemies, they exchanged a look that only they could understand. They really are the same type of people. The two of them thought to themselves. Nitrite Radical came in contact with 100 years of statecraft, while Peerless Genius came in contact with Chin-Chi. From the two of them, it could be seen that they were very similar. They kept their promises and their words were like mountains. Even if they weren't bound by the contract, they believed that these two people wouldn't be bribed. They didn't know why, but as the studio's businessmen, they shouldn't have so much trust in anyone. However, they trusted these two people indescribably. The two of them did not say anything and simply waited until the names of the 100-era strategist and Chin-Chi darkened. Both of you only have one developer, right? The first spokesperson asked again. That's right. Nitrite nodded. In fact, he knew in his heart that the bosses present might have already figured out how many developers he had. Perhaps they had secretly tried to win over the 100 Lives Classic. What about you, boss guy? The first spokesperson looked at Matchless Wonder. I only have one developer. Do you believe me? Matchless Wonder said. Since boss guy said so, you naturally only have one developer, the first spokesperson said. Matchless Wonder smiled and nodded. It's obvious that there's only one developer or two. Even if you don't know now, you'll find out in the future. Do you think I can tell a lie that will be exposed? You're right. The first spokesperson smiled. He thought so too. That might not be true, someone suddenly said. Matchless Wonder frowned. The person who said this was the only person in the room who had the same status as him. No, it should be said that the person who had more status than him in this matter, Nitrite. Bosya, do you have any doubts? Matchless Wonder didn't show his emotions and asked calmly. That's right. I want to ask, when did boss guys start developing the efficiency leveling method? Nitrite said. What do you mean? Matchless Wonder said. Because I know the progress of the efficiency leveling method. The efficiency leveling method is actually a very complicated technique. Not only do different classes have different methods, but players also have different attributes. Therefore, it takes a lot of time to develop the efficiency leveling method in every leveling area. Boss guy, according to your advertisement, you've already developed at least 10 leveling areas. I want to know when you'll start developing them. That way, I can confirm how many developers you have. Nitrite's words made Matchless Wonder feel bad. This guy from a second-rate studio looked listless and listless. He had long suspected that the advertisement in the 10 main cities was a smokescreen. His question was quite cunning. This guy was familiar with the progress of the efficiency leveling method. If Matchless Wonder told him the actual time, he would immediately know that Matchless Wonder had only developed 4 main cities. According to the 10 main cities that Matchless Wonder had reported, Matchless Wonder had 2 to 3 developers. However, the problem was that he didn't have any developers. If he couldn't hand them over, he could only admit that he had only developed 4 main cities. If he exposed this, Matchless Wonder would still benefit from it. However, he wouldn't be able to use this opportunity to weaken Yuntang. But what if he made up a time? Matchless Wonder thought about it and made up a time that was just right for him to complete 10 main cities. This was a very simple lie. Could it be that the other party didn't think of this? Could it be that he was waiting for Matchless Wonder to set up a trap for him? Matchless Wonder was conflicted. Was this a psychological trap or a counter-psychological trap? Matchless Wonder was suffering because of his cleverness. If he continued to think about it, everyone would be suspicious. He could only grit his teeth and make up a fake time. If he told the real time, he would definitely expose the fact that he had only developed 4 main cities. Matchless Wonder didn't want to see that happen. Therefore, he decided to take a gamble. He wanted to see if this second-rate studio guy had really set up a trap for him to fall into. "Oh, that's the time," Nitrite muttered. Everyone looked at him. The bosses of the other guilds didn't have an accurate understanding of the development progress. "If it's a bit hard, then one developer can really do it," Nitrite said. "Why do you sound like you're being sarcastic?" Matchless Wonder felt that he needed to maintain his composure. He couldn't be forced into a passive position by Nitrite. "No, I just want to say that the time that Bosco provided is real or fake. I don't think we have any way of knowing," Nitrite said. There were chairs for everyone in the meeting, but there were no tables. If there really was a table, Matchless Wonder reckoned that he would have already flipped the table. This guy was the one who asked about the time. Now that he said it, he said that he couldn't believe it. Was he kidding? "What do you mean? Are you kidding me?" Matchless Wonder laughed coldly. No, of course not. Actually, I want to have some time to do some research," Nitrite said. Chapter 931. Investigate? What do you want to investigate? Matchless Wonder asked with a frown. Many of the other studio owners looked at him suspiciously. They didn't know what Nitrite was so serious about. "I just want to know how many people Boss Guy has on his side," Nitrite said. "Similarly, Boss Guy can also confirm my side." "I don't need it," Matchless Wonder said. "Thank you for your trust." Nitrite smiled. However, everyone knew that this wasn't trust. It was because Yun Teng had been doing this for so many days. With Ing Chi Industries' largest intelligence network, he must have figured this out long ago. As for Ing Chi, he had silently destroyed 10 main cities the moment he appeared. No one could see through his trump cards. Although Matchless Genius had made his stance clear, everyone couldn't help but feel a little suspicious when they saw Nitrite's stubbornness. Could it be that Ing Chi really had another trump card? More importantly, they were happy to see Yun Tang and Ing Chi go against each other. That way, they could benefit from both sides. If the two sides got along well, then they would become the disadvantaged group again. Therefore, they would only be happy if the two sides fought. If the two sides chatted happily, then they wouldn't be happy. Therefore, at this moment, they were already embarrassed that they didn't come out to sow discord. They couldn't possibly dissuade Nitrite, who insisted on investigating. Matchless Wonder couldn't find a reason to dodge the question. He said helplessly, "How do you want to investigate?" "You don't have to worry about that, Bosco. In short, I'll definitely produce evidence that will convince everyone. Similarly, I won't interfere with how Bosco wants to investigate me," Nitrous Radical said. "Damn, this second-rate trash." Matchless Wonder cursed in his heart. His words were pretty, as if he was impartial. But why would he need to investigate himself? He had already found out everything he wanted to know. On the other hand, this guy was full of confidence and wanted to investigate his side. Could it be that he had something on him? But the problem was he didn't do anything shameful, other than falsely reporting the number of main cities he had developed. But Matchless Wonder would, of course, keep this under wraps. No one knew. Matchless Wonder didn't believe that anyone would be able to find out. Investigate? How are you going to investigate? Are you going to ask me? The other bosses were happy to see these two forces challenge each other. All of them smiled and watched the show from the side, like old foxes. Matchless Hero cursed in his heart, but there was nothing he could do. He didn't want to be on the passive side, but in the end he was still on the passive side. He could only send a message to Wu Yi, asking him to pay more attention, while he continued to think about how to make this Yun Ting brat be on the passive side. There were so many people in the room, but none of them spoke. The atmosphere was very awkward. As the host of the conference, the first speaker couldn't allow such a situation to happen. He intentionally looked for someone to chat with. Gradually, everyone started chatting. They talked about the recent exchange rate of gold coins, the prices of various mainstream equipment, what good items they had scammed recently, and what kind of exquisite items they had obtained. The meeting was temporarily suspended and turned into a tea party. On Ingqi's side, we did not dare to delay after receiving the news from unparalleled wondering. He quickly contacted the supervisors of the 10 main cities and asked if anything special had happened. This question came too suddenly, leaving the supervisor at a loss. Ingqi's advertisements for all 10 cities had been put out. Many players came to inquire, and some impatient ones wanted to pay the fees right away. The supervisor was also quite busy, so he didn't go out. He really didn't know if something had happened in the cities. As such, he quickly handed over the matters at hand and asked his subordinates while he personally went out to inquire. Wu Yi sat and waited for a reply. Gradually, there was news from all the cities. The main cities were so big, and there were so many players. Wouldn't there be gossip every day? In the end, a large pile of miscellaneous daily necessities, rice, oil, and salt was reported, making 5 knights dizzy. He hurriedly let the city lords analyze these matters to see if there was anything related to the efficient leveling method. Something related to the efficient leveling method? The supervisors muttered and organized the gossip. They didn't know what the situation was related to the efficient leveling method, so they could only deal with it according to their own ideas. After another round of searching, there were still no clues. 5 knights had no choice but to report to Matchless Elite. Matchless Hero felt a headache coming on. The more he couldn't find the problem, the more he felt that there was something fishy going on. He looked at Nitrite sitting across from him, calm and relaxed, chatting with his companions. What was going on? Matchless Hero was extremely annoyed. At this time, the bosses had been cooped up in the room for a long time and were a bit impatient. Someone finally asked Nitrite and Matchless Hero, "Bosses, how long are you guys going to investigate each other?" "Ask him." "I don't have that much time," Matchless Hero said. Nitrite smiled slightly and said, "The investigation can continue, but we don't have to stop our discussion, right? If you guys have anything to talk about, you can talk about it now." Damn. Why didn't he say so earlier? What a waste of the tea party. The bosses all thought so, so they sat down and began to seriously discuss the allocation of the efficient leveling method. The first spokesperson cleared his throat and began to speak. "Everyone here is a smart person, so let's not beat around the bush. Currently, the resources for the efficient leveling method are mainly in the hands of the two of you. We can only act as secondary agents. Now, some of us have 1 or 2 cities in our hands, and some of us still don't have anything. Because of Boss Guy's participation, Boss Nitrite, some of our previous agreements might have to be temporarily suspended, right?" "Understood." Nitrite nodded. "As for how the cities will be allocated, it's easy on our side. Everyone will split it equally, no one more, no one less. What we want to figure out now is how many cities will the two of you have for us to split, and how much commission we'll take. This is the problem that we have to solve today, right?" "Yes." Nitrite nodded again. "About this, can the two of you speak first?" The spokesperson said. "Boss Guy?" Nitrite gestured for Matchless Hero to speak first. 50. Matchless Hero opened his mouth and said. Everyone's expression changed. What did 50 mean? This bastard wanted to take up 50 cities by himself? That was too shameless. Everyone thought so, but the spokesperson squeezed a smile and said, "Boss Guy, don't be abstract. What do you mean by 50? Boss Nitrite and I will each be responsible for the development of 50 cities. After that, we'll work together with everyone else. I think it's fair, Matchless Hero said. 50 each? Everyone was stunned. This seemed like a fair distribution, but it wasn't fair at the moment. Nitrite and Yunteng's side had started with 30 cities. Adding on the development progress of the past few days, they were close to 50 cities. Even if the two sides didn't compete with each other for development, Yunteng could conservatively occupy 70 to 80% of the market. Now that each of them wanted 50 cities, it was basically asking Yunteng to give up on development and leave the rest of the cake to Matchless Hero. How could Yunteng agree to that? As expected, Nitrite shook his head and said, "Boss Guy's idea seems a little ridiculous, right? It's like we're running 100 meters and I'm already at 50 meters. You come and tell me to stop, and then you leisurely run 50 meters as well. Then, you move the finish line over and announce that the race is over. But I'm afraid that's a little inappropriate, right? Why should I let Boss Guy run 50 meters? Even if you've already run 10 meters, we're still 40 meters away. In my opinion, if Boss Guy wants to split evenly, then we should start now. We only have 40 meters left, so we can only split evenly. 20 cities each." Matchless Hero laughed. 10 cities, 20 cities, or 50 cities, it doesn't matter to me. Everyone knows that something happened to Inky recently. So, although we have the ability to develop these cities, it's difficult to operate them. So, I'm prepared to hand over all the cities that I've developed to you. With my current ability, I can only take a commission. Once Matchless Hero said this, everyone was in an uproar. Nitrite frowned. The boss of the biggest studio in the industry was indeed not easy to deal with. This idea was aimed at Yunteng's weakness. He used the mentality of many studios to maximize their profits to come up with this plan. This was something that Yunteng couldn't compete with. This was because Yunteng had either developed their own cities or handed them over. Although each city had only opened up 1 or 2 leveling areas, everyone knew that the first bite was always the sweetest. Any more, and the taste would be greatly reduced. Yunteng's bitten cakes were far less tempting than the fresh ones. Now that Matchless Hero didn't take a bite of the fresh ones, it was obvious that he didn't want to make a huge profit from this deal, but he also didn't want Yunteng to earn more. Because he knew that Yunteng was too reliant on this deal. If they earned less, their lives would be more difficult. Everyone. Matchless Hero didn't give Nitrite a chance to speak. He raised his hands high. "These 50 cities, if you hand them over to me, I'll take every city." Matchless Hero raised his voice and clenched his right fist. He only raised 2 fingers. "I'll only take 20% of the profits." The bosses were naturally overjoyed. Originally, they had to pay 30% of the profits when working with Yunteng. Now it was 20%. Everyone looked at Matchless Hero with stars in their eyes. Currently, the bosses who had taken the cities from Yunteng and paid the 30% commission were full of regret. What's the rush? Wouldn't it be better to wait a little longer? 1 person to develop 50 cities, 1 person to develop 50 cities. It's fair and reasonable. Many of the bosses were already shouting shamelessly. What they wanted was never fairness or reasonableness. What they wanted was only benefits. Chapter 932. Matchless Genius had a smug look on his face. If this went through, Yunteng's 100% market share would be cut in half. It would be very painful. He guessed that Nitrite Radical wouldn't agree, but what kind of excuse would he have? Matchless Hero really wanted to listen to it. Nitrite Radical took a deep breath, smiled, and said slowly, "Boss Guy, this is your commission system. What does it have to do with how we divide the districts?" This second-rate guy was very calm. Matchless Wonder was startled, then smiled. "How is it unrelated? Let everyone here earn money. That's our goal. I only want 20%. What about you, Boss Nitrite?" Unparalleled Wonder was not naive. Nitrite Radical's words showed his calmness. Although Unparalleled Wonder had lowered his commission and made all the bosses look at him as if they had taken stimulants, Nitrite Radical would definitely not agree to a 50-city per person split. One side insisted, while the other side refused. What would be the result? Naturally, the negotiation would break down, and everyone would go back to their own businesses. Matchless Wonder did not want that to happen. He had started too late and had only won the current situation because of a smoke bomb. He wanted to make good use of this negotiation opportunity and force all the bosses to pressure Nitrite Radical. 50 city per studio was too much. Matchless Wonder did not believe that the negotiation would go through. In fact, his real goal was to lower the price. This was the most common method that big studios used to deal with small studios. Lower the price, even if it was at a loss. Big studios had a strong foundation and could hold on. Small studios did not have such a foundation and often couldn't hold on after a loss. Although Yun Teng had poached Ing Chi's people and suddenly seemed to have the same number of people as Ing Chi, their foundation hadn't changed. They needed to rely on the efficiency leveling method to strengthen their foundation. Matchless Wonder's strategy had never changed. He had always been making a big deal from this angle. Efficiency leveling method. It was fine if they did not make money, but Yun Teng could not rely on it to gain a foothold. The bosses present were all top talents in their studios. How could they not understand Matchless Wonder's intentions? But they didn't care about the life and death of these two families. They only knew that in this vicious competition, the ones who would benefit in the end would definitely be them, the third parties. Instantly, all of them beamed with joy. The looks they exchanged seemed to be saying, "It's really right to propose this meeting. Boss guy, if you want 20%, go ahead. I'll give you 30 main cities. You can do whatever you want," Nitrite Radical said. 30? Do you think I'm a beggar? We have so many people here. 30 main cities. If Bossia isn't willing to share the profits, I think it's better for you to manage your 30 main cities and leave the rest to us. Matchless Wonder's cunning face became more and more ferocious. He used a low commission of 20% to win over all the studios. When he referred to himself, he did not use I, but we. The implication was, you're offering such a high price, but no one wants to work with you, so all the studios are working with me. We have so many people, so of course we should have more main cities. Peerless Genius wanted to kill Yun Teng, so how could Nitrite Radical agree to this? The two sides began a long tug-of-war. The first speaker of the conference even sent someone to deliver some drinks for everyone to quench their thirst when they were thirsty. Everyone was mentally prepared for the conference to drag on. It was such a big deal, and it would not be easy to come up with a solution that everyone was satisfied with. It would be too impolite to come up with a decision after a few words. After all, everyone here was a big shot in the industry. A bunch of people bickered endlessly. In terms of words, Matchless Genius was more incisive. Nitrite Radical avoided the important points and focused on the trivial ones. Gradually, Matchless Genius became more and more suspicious. He felt that Nitrite Radical did not seem to be asking for an acceptable solution. It was as if he was purposely causing trouble. It looked like he was stalling for time. How long had it been? Matchless Genius suddenly thought of this. He looked at the time and remembered the investigation that Nitrite Radical had sent out. Could it be that this guy is stalling for time to wait for the results of the investigation? Matchless Genius thought to himself. But then he remembered that everyone had been waiting for the results of the investigation. In the end, Nitrite Radical had said that they could discuss it first and that there was no need to wait. What was this guy investigating? Why was he stalling now? Matchless Genius suddenly felt very uneasy. He felt that he had neglected an important issue. This deep thought caused him to be seriously distracted. After a while, he heard Nitrite Radical's voice. Why isn't Boss Guy saying anything? Do you think my idea is very promising? Ah! Matchless Genius came back to his senses. He had long stopped listening to Nitrite Radical's words. This second-rate guy was just messing around. What did he just say? Matchless Genius looked around. Everyone seemed to be waiting for his reply. Matchless Genius was about to ask again when he suddenly received a message notification. He opened it and saw that it was 5 nights. For words, bad news. What is it? Matchless Genius warned himself not to panic. It was normal for the other party to have a plan. 5 nights' reply was another 4 words. Qian Li is drunk. Fuck. Matchless Genius did not panic. He was furious. 5 Knights' reply followed. Matchless Genius opened it and it was as he had expected. While they were dawdling and having a meeting, Qianli was drunk and had developed all 10 of his main cities. What is it? The bosses were surprised that Matchless Genius had such a big reaction. There was nothing special about Nitrite Radical's suggestion. Everyone was about to fall asleep, but Matchless Genius did not react for a long time. Why did he suddenly have such a big reaction? You bastard! Matchless Genius pointed at Nitrite Radical. What's going on? Boss guy, watch your manners. Nitrite Radical frowned. The other bosses also said, that's right. Why are you scolding him? We're all civilized people. It's not like Qianli is drunk. Someone even mentioned Qianli is drunk. Matchless Genius really wanted to spit blood in that person's face. Some of the bosses here finally received some news, and their expressions immediately changed. This kind of change spread very quickly. It could be seen that the intelligence network of these studios was very sound, and their efficiency was quite consistent. Nitrite Radical's expression changed as well. He looked at everyone with a pained expression. Everyone received the news? Everyone knew what he was talking about and nodded in unison. Fuck! Nitrite Radical lost his manners. Fuck! You bastard! You ordered Qianli to get drunk and cause trouble, didn't you? Matchless Genius was obviously going crazy. Everyone's eyes instantly turned to Nitrite Radical. Nitrite Radical looked as if he had been wronged. Boss guy, how could you say that? Isn't that your feud with 1,000 miles drunk? Everyone looked at Matchless Genius again. Everyone knew about the incident between Matchless Genius and Qianli. Matchless Genius's eyes were filled with anger. He didn't believe that Qianli's appearance had nothing to do with Nitrite Radical. However, what evidence could he have? The advertisement of Matchless Genius's efficiency leveling method was posted on the forums. Of course, Qianli saw it when he was drunk and came to cause trouble for revenge. This reason was very easy to accept and believe. Boss guy, if you still want to do this, can you please hide the advertisement a little? Don't make it so obvious. Look at the 10 main cities, they've all been destroyed like Cloud City. Nitrite Radical said with a pained expression. Hearing this, all the bosses' expressions changed again. They all started to agree with Nitrite Radical. They all received information that the 10 main cities developed by Matchless Genius were all visited by Qianli. He also did what he did in Cloud City, teach them the efficiency leveling method for free. Although Matchless Genius's advertisement was released and they all started to charge for it, who would care about them after Qianli got drunk? The businesses of the 10 main cities were all destroyed just like that. They didn't even have a place to explain themselves. Qianli was a player. What could you do to a player? Unless someone could bribe Qianli to get drunk. However, this obviously wouldn't work. All the bosses present had tried this before. Who wouldn't want to do the efficiency leveling method business? Everyone knew that Qianli was able to cause trouble when he was drunk. How could they not contact him? In the end, he didn't even care about them. What I'm more worried about is, will Qianli take his anger out on us because of this? Nitrite Radical's face was full of worry. The bosses were all panicking. No matter how good their advertisement was or how considerate their service was, the word free was enough to keep them under control. Boss guy, you have to decide this for us. Nitrite said. Don't worry, I'll definitely give you an explanation. Matchless Genius enunciated each word. His eyes were about to spit fire. Hurry up. After 8,000 miles of drunkenness is done with these 10 cities, will he go somewhere else? Nitrite Radical said to everyone. Yeah, hurry up, boss guy. Everyone said in unison. But Matchless Genius gritted his teeth and took out a teleportation scroll before flying away. The 10 main cities that Matchless Genius advertised each had a leveling area that was already packed with people. However, only one class was active in each leveling area. This was because there was only one type of efficiency leveling method available for free. Some were for warriors, some were for thieves. If this goes on, the other classes won't be able to keep their cool. Southern Azure Sword, who had spread the warrior efficiency leveling method in a certain city, said after seeing the warriors in the leveling area full of energy while the other classes looked depressed. Same here. I think the mages are going to insta-kill the thieves. Blackwater reflected on the situation on his side. Same here. Every main city said the same thing. Hey, you're doing pretty well. Who taught you that? In the 10th main city, Gu Fei was very interested in the glue efficiency leveling method. Chapter 933. At this moment, Glue was holding a short crossbow. He was only 5 steps away from the small monster. Positioning, attack, double combo, sniping, he was incomparably skilled. Moreover, he was attacking the holes in the small monster's attacks, never stopping, safe and efficient. This was indeed the inspiration that Gu Fei had given to Yutian Shinming, but he hadn't created an efficient leveling method for archers. Hee hee. Glue laughed. I trained with Baisher. In the future, I'll be using a crossbow when I level. Baisher? Gu Fei asked. Nope. He just researched the monster's attack patterns, and then I researched it myself based on the archer's skills and my own attributes. Glue explained. Gu Fei understood. So it was a copy of the conversation between him and Yutian Shinming. However, people had already started doing it long ago, so Glue had already successfully developed it. How is it? Glue asked the Great Master for guidance. Not bad, not bad. I should have brought Yutian over and let him learn from you. He's currently thinking of this method. Gu Fei said. This isn't difficult. The key is still your research on the small monster's attack patterns. It's really inconceivable. After following the method you guys taught, the small monsters seem to be controlled by us. Glue now greatly admired people like Gu Fei and Baisher Jingluan. His words also revealed the true meaning of the efficient leveling method. The efficient leveling method wasn't just about familiarizing yourself with the small monster's attack patterns and making reasonable attacks. It was also about using active attacks to bring the small monsters into one's own attack rhythm. Gu Fei and the others designed such a pattern, each one accurate. The most important part of this design was to understand the small monster's attack patterns and test out the small monster's reactions under various attacks. This step could only be done by experts like Gu Fei and Baisher Jingluan. After understanding this stage, it was up to the expert players to figure out how to lead the monsters into a rhythm. Just like Glue, he had never encountered the small monsters in the 10th city before. After listening to Gu Fei's explanation, he spent some time to get the hang of it. However, he was still a long way from completing it. After all, he was not a professional like Gu Fei and the others, so he was far from being efficient. Not bad, not bad. You have some skills. Gu Fei was not stingy with his praise for the glue. However, the 10th main city didn't have an archer playstyle. It was still a thief playstyle, and the one who came to be the instructor was Slender Waist Dancer, who loved to find trouble. Gu Fei explored every place without attracting attention. Then, he let the accompanying mentors learn from him first. Gu Fei then went to the next place until he had visited all 10 places. After all 10 mentors had learned it, he suddenly started the free MLM in the 10 main cities at the same time. As a result, when the bosses of the major studios received the news, the same thing had happened in all 10 main cities. They couldn't figure out what was going on. All they knew was that the entire city was talking about how the free and efficient leveling method had spread to them. The most tragic one was Ying Qi. He had originally planned to charge a fee for the promotion, but now he was completely deserted. Many of the players who had already paid for the promotion asked for a refund and scolded Ying Qi's studio for deceiving them. There was already a free promotion, yet they were still extorting the players' hard-earned money. Ying Qi was in a mess. He had to ask the boss if he wanted to refund the money. However, Matchless Wonder was so frustrated that he didn't reply for a long time. After leaving the meeting, Matchless Wonder flew directly to one of the 10 main cities. 5 Nights was already waiting for him. Behind him was the city manager, who was also an old employee of Ying Qi Studio. Matchless Wonder came out of the teleportation circle and saw many players running towards the leveling area outside the city. The studio received the news relatively quickly. It was still the time for the news to spread. Countless players were running out of the city after hearing the news. 5 knights asked for the boss's location and ran over with the city manager. Seeing Matchless Wonder's dark face, 5 knights shivered. "Boss." Wu Yi greeted him when he arrived in front of him, not daring to say anything else. "Do you have any further information? I've already sent people to the leveling area outside the city, but there's still no news." 5 knights said. "The situation in all 10 cities is the same?" Matchless Wonder asked. "It's the same." 5 knights said. "There weren't any signs at all?" "No, definitely not. When you told us to pay attention to what was going on, we've been paying attention to what was going on inside and outside the city." All of the 10 main cities suddenly started moving. After asking around, they all said that someone was teaching the free efficient leveling method in the leveling area, so I immediately reported it to you. 5 knights said. Matchless Wonder was startled and looked at 5 knights. "So you don't know if Qianli is drunk or not? Who else could it be other than him?" 5 knights said. "Then whether or not it's really an efficient leveling method, you guys haven't seen it with your own eyes." Matchless Wonder asked. "This can't be a joke?" 5 knights panicked. Indeed, they didn't have first-hand information about the leveling area. They only saw the commotion in the city and heard about this rumor. Plus, many people were clamoring for a refund, so they didn't dare to doubt it anymore. "Is there still no news from the leveling area?" Matchless Wonder asked. "I'll contact the other cities and see." 5 knights immediately contacted the managers of the other 9 cities. After a while, he finally got some news. There's news about a leveling area in city. Indeed, it's an efficient leveling method. It's not fake, but it's only for the thief class. Other classes haven't been spread yet. Conspiracy! This is a conspiracy! Matchless Wonder now firmly believed that Qianli coming to cause trouble wasn't because of a personal grudge, but because he and Yun Ting had planned this together. That second-rate guy wanted to investigate and stall for time, but in reality he was buying time for Qianli to get drunk. Why was there only one class in each city? Because there wasn't enough time. If every city was fully developed, 10 main cities wouldn't be done in a day or 2. So, this guy would go to one main city and develop a new class. He would change it after every shot, and he would do it in secret. He wouldn't expose himself for now, but when all 10 main cities had been explored, he would reveal it all at once. Matchless Wonder wouldn't believe that they weren't colluding with him. But what could he do if he didn't believe it? He had no evidence at all. Drunk Qianli had a grudge with Inch Chi, so when he saw that Inch Chi was doing business, he came to cause trouble. This reason was too perfect. What about Qianli, drunk? Have you seen him in any city? Matchless Wonder asked. I don't know. 5 knights said. He's taught in all 10 cities and no one has seen him? Matchless Wonder was angry, but he immediately realized that Qianli was in the development business, but the person who taught the players was someone else. This was because Qianli couldn't possibly teach in all 10 main cities at once. We're still investigating who taught him, 5 knights said. Do you have any clues? Just starting. 5 knights wiped his sweat. Whenever his boss was angry, it would always put a lot of pressure on him. Boss guy, how is it? The boss of a studio sent a message. Matchless Wonder was silent. He suddenly realized that he had made another mistake. He shouldn't have left the conference. His departure had created an opportunity for the nitrite radicals. He had offended Qianli, and Qianli's drunk was too much of a hindrance to the business of efficient leveling methods. Especially after Cloud City was popularized, all the players in the main cities were very envious. They all hoped that this hero would come down from the sky and popularize it for them. No one in the 10 main cities had ever seen Qianli's drunk, and the person who taught them efficient leveling methods definitely wasn't Qianli's. However, everyone believed that it was Qianli's doing, and they all praised him. Although there was only one efficient leveling method in each city, and the other professions definitely wouldn't feel fair, everyone was still patient and waiting. Under these circumstances, studios that had to pay fees couldn't get involved at all. Everyone was hoping for Qianli's drunk to come and save them. You charge 80 for free, and if you go looking for him, you'll be lucky if he doesn't kill you. Even if he was at the conference, Nitrite could have privately communicated with the other guild leaders, stating that they had to dump him for this deal. In the end, he still left, and Nitrite didn't even have to send out a message, and directly gave a speech to the other bosses. How long had it been since he arrived? Someone had already messaged him to ask if he had dealt with it. Hurry, 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 hurry. Matchless Wonder really wanted to curse. He knew that in the eyes of the other bosses, he was now a jinx, a scourge. From being on the same level as Nitrite, he was the person that all the bosses wanted to curry favor with, and in the blink of an eye, he had become the god of misfortune that everyone avoided. It was as if they couldn't do business with him. It wasn't easy to find an opportunity to make some money and attack Yun Teng, but in the blink of an eye, it was destroyed. Qianli's drunk, Qianli's drunk. Matchless Wonder wanted to crush these 4 words in his mouth, and he yelled at 5 knights, "Find Qianli's drunk for me." 5 knights ran off to give out orders, asking all the main cities to send people to keep an eye on Qianli's drunk movements. Matchless Wonder then summoned Eternal, telling him to get rid of Qianli's drunk at all costs. Matchless Wonder finally understood that if he didn't get rid of Qianli's drunk, his studio wouldn't have peace. This time, he had messed up his leveling method, and he didn't know what would happen next time. Eternal received the news, and he quickly gathered everyone in the Eagle group. When everyone heard that the boss was going to go crazy on Qianli's drunk again, they felt helpless. This opponent couldn't be taken down using normal methods. Chapter 934. Where was Qianli drunk? This question was too complicated. He was now a high-ranking player. He wasn't like ordinary players who stayed in and out of their main cities. Instead, he flew all over the main cities of the world. Right now, who knew which of the 10 main cities he was in? Or did he return to Cloud City? It was difficult to find a person, but it was even more difficult to find a guy like 1,000 miles drunk who had an extraordinary range of activity. Fortunately, Qianli drunk was arrogant enough. Black shirt and purple sword, the whole world knew that this was his signature outfit. Even with 2 pieces of such superb equipment, he wasn't afraid of thieves. It was said that he often carried his sword high up on the street, afraid that bandits wouldn't see it. The people of Age's studio received a unified order to put down all work and go out to find this arrogant guy. If they found him, they were to report to their superiors. The players outside the city were in high spirits as they trained, praising 1,000 miles drunk nonstop. The workers of the studio came out from every corner, going to the revival point, the trading street, the mailbox, the tavern, and any other crowded place, gritting their teeth to find out the whereabouts of Qianli drunk. Gu Fei wasn't afraid of this, and he didn't care. He had already gone offline to rest, but was summoned to walk around the 10 main cities. Now that his task was complete, he just needed to wait for Thin Waist Dancer to have enough fun, then everyone would return to Cloud City. However, this playful lass was surprisingly restrained today. After playing around for a while, she ran back and threw a dagger towards Gu Fei. She scolded. "This old lady has roamed the game for so many years, but I have never used such a trashy weapon." Gu Fei laughed, caught the dagger, wiped it, and put it back in his pocket. Slim Waist Dancer's equipment was too powerful. She killed the monsters in 2 or 3 hits. It was clearly not suitable for her to be a teacher. After that, she took off her equipment and took the teaching dagger that Gu Fei had given her. Only then did she complete the task. "Damn, you still treat it like a treasure." Slender Waist Dance looked like she was about to vomit. That dagger was probably the lowest end in the world. Its attack power was so low that it could not be any lower. Slender Waist Dance felt disgusted holding it in her hands. It was like a nightmare. Using this trash to fight monsters made her feel uncomfortable, which affected her mood. After a while, she switched to her own dagger and left after killing a bunch of monsters. Glue also laughed. Baisher too. He also got a dagger like this and carries it around with him. He uses it to increase the efficiency of leveling. Did you hear that? This isn't a weapon, it's a research tool. Gu Fei said. Thin Waist Dance snorted. Of course, she also knew the reason for using such a broken thing. In the end, she asked, "When are you going to teach me how to fight level 60 monsters?" Most experts could learn level 50 from Gu Fei, But Slim Waist Dancer was a tycoon with a full set of equipment. Once he mastered the technique, he could definitely challenge level 60 like Gu Fei, or even level 55. Tomorrow. Tomorrow. Gu Fei said. Now. Tomorrow. What about now? Rest now. Gu Fei said. You're so boring. Thin Waist Dancer said. Gu Fei was helpless. He shouldn't have appeared at this time, it was purely an accident. Then let's go back. Thin Waist Dancer took out a scroll and the three of them teleported away. Thin Waist Dancer was undoubtedly a girl that attracted a lot of attention. She wasn't as professional and low-key as the teachers in other places. Later on, she switched to her powerful equipment and killed monsters, leaving a deep impression on the players in the leveling area. Cheese people didn't find any clues in the other 9 cities, but they finally found something in the 10th city. Through the description of the players in the leveling area, they quickly determined that this girl was Thin Waist Dancer. They didn't have any clues in the other 9 cities, but this was the only place that had some information. They had no choice but to bring people to this city. If it was a direct confrontation, the Eagle Party wouldn't be afraid of Qianli's Drunken. Their equipment was high quality, so Qianli's Drunken wasn't something that could be instantly killed by them. Moreover, all of their classes had perfect teamwork, and their coordination was also top-notch. As long as they weren't alone, they could put up a fight against Qianli's Drunken. However, this fight was only a draw. They weren't afraid, but it didn't mean that they had a way to kill Qianli's Drunken. Qianli's Drunken was agile, and his attacks could be ranged or melee. If you treated him as a mage, he was a warrior. If you treated him as a warrior, he could be a mage. If you had a lot of people, he could ignore you. If you had few people, he could bully you. Forever was in pain. Actually, this was like a big guild. A level 6 guild with thousands of players wouldn't be afraid of Qianli's Drunken, but in the end, no one would be able to do anything to the other. Forever sighed. He brought his brothers to the 10th city. Along the way, they discussed for a while, but couldn't come up with a good plan. They definitely couldn't just charge in head-on. People wouldn't be stupid enough to wait for you to surround them. Thus, they could only set up a trap and lure Qianli into it. However, Qianli's Drunken had the ability to teleport 6 meters away. If the encirclement was small, he could just jump out of the circle and escape. If the encirclement was large, Qianli's movement would instantly mess up their formation. What should we do? Forever was troubled. However, this trouble passed quickly because new information arrived. Qianli got drunk and went offline. Alright, we came here for nothing, Forever said helplessly to the others. What do we do now? I don't know. This time, Qianli got drunk and went overboard. A big deal was ruined by him. The boss spent a lot of money to hire people to create this efficient leveling method. Now that they can't continue because of Qianli's Drunken, they'll definitely lose money, Forever sighed. Everyone was silent. They didn't need to worry about the boss's business this time, but this time, it was because of the interference of the players that his business was in a mess. It seemed like they had to solve this problem. It seemed like the boss saw eliminating Qianli's Drunken as the key to solving this problem. Anyway, Qianli's Drunken and isn't online. Everyone go back. Rest well for the next few days, I'm going to be busy. Forever said. Qianli got drunk and went offline. Matchless Genius quickly received the news. He helplessly flew back to the meeting hall. Everyone was waiting for his explanation. I'll definitely take care of Qianli when he's drunk, but he's not online right now, Matchless Genius said. It seems like this guy is messing around because of you, someone said. Matchless Genius was silent. His words were filled with sarcasm. He had already expected this outcome. These people wanted to kick him out of the game. Matchless Hero suddenly smiled. Don't forget, I have resources. You do have resources, but with Qianli causing trouble like this, you won't be able to sell them even if you have resources. Someone said. That would be terrible. Matchless Wonder's smile was dark. My friend, Mr. Chenqi, has high hopes for this deal. Now that he can't proceed with it, do you think he'll retaliate against society in a fit of anger? What do you mean? Everyone was shocked when they heard this. This peerless genius seemed to have gone mad from anger. He actually thought of such a despicable move. What he meant was that if he couldn't do this business, then everyone else shouldn't even think about doing it. He would instruct his developer to teach the efficiency leveling method for free. "You're threatening us," someone said unhappily. "How can you say that? I already told you, it's my business partner. Look, I offended Qianli, and he's using this method to get back at me. But he didn't think that he wouldn't just cut off my source of income. I don't have much power, so I can only endure it. Who knows, maybe someone else will use the same method to retaliate." Matchless Genius said. The other bosses were going crazy. They immediately understood what Matchless Genius was trying to say. Qianli suddenly jumped out to cause trouble. Was it Yunteng's doing? The bosses all had their own thoughts, but to be honest, they didn't care too much. They just wanted to finish this business in peace. But now that Yunteng and Yingqi were fighting, it seemed like they were going to lose everything. Matchless Genius clearly believed that Yunteng and Qianli had colluded. An eye for an eye. He was willing to pay the price and drag Yunteng down with him. Fuck, you two can die however you want, but everyone still wants to make money. The bosses wanted to cry, but no tears came out. They imagined that the two of them would fight each other, and they would reap the benefits. Who would have thought that the two of them would fight so fiercely? They were going to fight to the death. "Boss Ya, what do you think?" Matchless Genius directly called out his name. "Everyone, let's talk this out." One of the bosses tried to persuade them. Someone even jumped out and said, "Is there anyone who knows Qianli when he gets drunk? Can't we mediate?" This was a hint to Nitrite Radical to stop this. "There's no need for that." Matchless Genius smiled, then said, "Actually, if I'm only in charge of development, I don't need to go to the front desk. All of you will be in charge of the publicity. What kind of tricks does 1,000 miles drunk have to know which of these deals involve Yingqi? So as long as it's not anyone here who goes to greet Qianli when he gets drunk, he won't be able to find out which deals are related to Yingqi." Nitrite Radical laughed and shook his head. "Boss Guy, I understand what you're saying. You're sure that I'm the one who invited Qianli when he gets drunk, right? Do you think that as long as I don't tell anyone, Qianli won't be able to mess with you when he gets drunk?" "Isn't that so?" Matchless Genius said. "Boss Guy, it seems like you don't care about the players you've offended. To tell you the truth, it wasn't my idea for Qianli to mess with your business when he gets drunk. I don't have the authority to order this expert around. Boss Guy, you've dealt with this person before. Do you think he's someone you can bribe and say that he won't go west? You've misunderstood, you've really misunderstood. It's not Qianli who's helping me, it's Qianli who's dealing with you. I'm just benefiting from my position. Understand your opponent, Boss Guy." Chapter 935. The bosses looked at Matchless Genius, then at Nitrite Radical. They couldn't decide who to listen to. Matchless Genius's attitude was that he had to get this deal done. According to his plan, drunk Qianli wouldn't have a reason to ruin the deal unless Nitrite Radical wanted to use him to do his dirty work. If Nitrite Radical wanted to use him to do his dirty work, then they would fight to the death. This was what Matchless Genius wanted. What about Nitrite Radical? He wanted to clarify that he had nothing to do with drunk Qianli. Qianli Zue's behavior was a spontaneous revenge against Yingqi Studio, and Yunteng was just taking advantage of the situation. It was impossible to stop Qianli Zue from doing anything, or to get a guarantee that Qianli Zue would not cause trouble, because Qianli Zue was not under their control. Which one was real and which one was fake? No one knew. As a group of competitors, there was no absolute trust between them. Now that the two of them were speaking with logic and had no flaws, everyone was at a loss. Matchless Genius stared at Nitrite Radical. This was a second-rate character in his eyes. After a while, he smiled and stood up. If that's the case, then there's nothing else to say. What happens next is up to fate. After Guy Shiqing said this, he wanted to leave. However, the other bosses rushed forward and pushed him back to his seat. All of them were smiling. "Boss Guy, don't be anxious. The purpose of today's meeting is to find a peaceful solution. Let's discuss. Everyone wants to settle this deal peacefully, right?" Matchless Genius asked. Everyone nodded with all their might. Get rid of 1,000 miles drunk. Matchless Genius squeezed out these words from between his teeth. The room suddenly became quiet. No one had expected that such a choice would appear at the end of the day. Drunk Qianli? Of course, all the bosses present had heard of this name. Although this was a character that struck fear in the hearts of players, no matter how powerful a player's character was, no one would believe that it could affect their studio's business before today. But the truth was right in front of them. Matchless Hero's attitude was clear. As long as Qianli was here, he couldn't do it. If he couldn't do it, no one else could. This could be said to be a threat. If it was any other time, everyone would definitely rush up to accuse him, but today, no one dared to do so. Firstly, this transaction was too big, so big that no one was willing to part with it. Secondly, Matchless Hero had been in a miserable state recently. His people were being poached, his goods were being robbed, and now, a big deal was being forced to go through with it. Under such circumstances, what else could he not do? The fact that he would use this as a threat meant that he had already lost his rationality. He didn't even think about whether he could have a smooth road in the future after he had threatened all the studios like this. Matchless Wonder's gloomy smile made everyone give up on trying to persuade him. They all turned to look at the nitrite radicals on the other side. Boss Yaoi about this? Some people were testing him verbally, while others sent a private message to Nitrite. Does Qianli's drunkenness have anything to do with you? If you do, just accept it. This guy is crazy. Nitrite sighed and looked at everyone. Once again, he said, I really have nothing to do with Qianli's drunkenness. Then, are you going to join us in dealing with Qianli's drunkenness? Matchless Hero asked. Nitrite sighed again and looked at the crowd. I'm also a studio. I only want to make money. Of course, the meaning was clear. He wanted money, and now that Qianli's drunkenness was in their way, he naturally wouldn't go easy on him. Very well. Matchless Hero nodded, but his expression didn't show that he was saying yes. Then, think of a way to deal with Qianli's drunkenness first? One of the bosses looked around. Spend money to hire experts? Another boss asked. This was the usual way of dealing with this kind of thing in their studio. I heard that Qianli can fight 1,000 people when he's drunk. How many people do we need to hire? Another said. We have people already, Matchless Hero said. Oh. Everyone looked at him. In the 30 main cities where Bossia is promoting the efficiency leveling method, there are some disputes in many of them. Don't you guys know about this? Matchless Hero asked. Someone immediately nodded. It seems that some people in these main cities teamed up to go to Cloud City for some reason. In the end, they were completely defeated by Qianli's drunkenness. Another person continued, I think they were killed 2 or 3 times. Later, they called more people to take revenge. But halfway through, they were intercepted by Qianli's drunkenness. They all ran back to the main city to hide. Later on, it seems that because the efficiency leveling method was about to start, they didn't continue. All the bosses had their own information in their hands. One after another, they recounted the sad things that they had experienced. Boss Go, are you saying that we should use these people to go to Cloud City and cause trouble for Qianli's drunkenness? Someone asked. The last time this group of fellows stopped halfway through, there might be tens of thousands of them altogether. That's quite impressive, said a boss. Matchless Hero laughed coldly. That's right. They stopped halfway through. If they continued, we might not have to deal with Qianli's drunkenness. Boss Ya, do you know about this? I know a little. Know a little? That can't be right? Boss Ya's first batch of 30 main cities included all of the players' main cities. There should be more than 20 of them, right? Boss, you won't tell me that it's a coincidence, right? According to the map, these 20 or so main cities aren't connected at all. Matchless Genius said. Of course not. Someone asked me to develop these main cities first. Nitrous Radical was straightforward. Matchless Hero asked. A very powerful person. And you did it. Nitrite nodded. Why is Bossia so obedient? Matchless Hero laughed coldly. Very powerful is a big client of our studio. This is a piece of cake for me. For me, what difference does it make which main cities to develop first? Nitrite Radical shrugged. How big is very powerful? How can he be a big client? Matchless Hero said. Nitrite laughed. Bosco, why are you joking with me again? Although very powerful isn't a big guild, I'm sure Bosco knows its value better than I do. Isn't it because Bosco knows their value too well? That's why he caused so much trouble. So you're saying that Bosya got what I didn't get? Far from it. Nitrite shook his head. Seeing that Matchless Hero didn't say anything, Nitrite continued, speaking of which, why would a group of players go to Cloud City to cause trouble for very powerful in these 20 main cities that don't seem to be connected to each other? Bosco, do you know about this? Who knows? Matchless Hero said calmly. The other bosses listened to the two guys' conversation and didn't dare to interrupt. Now that both of them had stopped, someone carefully asked, returning to the previous topic, can that group of people reunite? This requires everyone here to do their part, Matchless Hero said. Unparalleled Wonder said, I believe everyone here has the ability to influence certain guilds, right? Whether or not that group of people can reunite will depend on everyone's efforts. It was more than enough to say that. Who among the people present didn't know how to spread rumors in the 26 main cities 5 nights ago? With their experience, they could tell that the rumors spread too quickly in these main cities. If it wasn't purposely spread, it wouldn't be like this. From the conversation between Nitrite and Matchless Wonder, everyone could tell that there was a hidden meaning to it. However, they didn't want to ask about the details. At this point, they already knew what they needed to do. Those who could fan the flames would do so, and those who could beat around the bush would do so. Ing Chi's intelligence network was big enough, but it couldn't be bigger than the intelligence network of all the gaming studios in the industry combined. Matchless Hero knew very well that if they gathered together, they wouldn't be able to kill Qianli Drunk alone. However, they could use more power to target Qianli Drunk. The forces of the 26 main cities once again launched an expedition to Cloud City. With their combined efforts, they would definitely be able to succeed. If they really fight this time, it'll be very lively, one of the bosses said as he gave instructions to his subordinates. There hasn't been such a large-scale PvP in the game, right? Someone else said. It depends on what you say. If you're talking about the number of participants, it's not that many. Moonlight Night City has had many large-scale PvP battles that involve the entire city, so the number of participants will definitely be higher than this. However, if we're talking about the quality, this time it's unparalleled. The experts of the 26 main cities have all gathered together. This is something that has never happened before. One person said, but isn't it a bit hard to say if they're going to fight in an away game? Quality on one side and quantity on the other. It's hard to say. Who cares, as long as Qianli Drunk dies in the chaos, it's fine. That guy is so OP, he can't still be alive even if everyone dies, right? Is he really that OP? Why are you asking me? I don't understand. A boss who wasn't even level 10 said. Regardless, let's send these people over first. If it doesn't work, we'll think of something else. The first speaker of the meeting said. After that, he said to Nitrite and Matchless Hero, guys, before we deal with Qianli Drunk, let's stop developing the efficiency leveling method for a bit, just in case something goes wrong. What do you think? I'm fine with that. Nitrite said. I have a small suggestion. Matchless Hero suddenly said. Chapter 936. Matchless Wonder had a suggestion again. Everyone panicked a little. This person was getting more and more gloomy today. What was he up to this time? No one said anything. They looked at Matchless Wonder and waited for him to speak. Matchless Wonder looked at Nitrite Radical and said, Bosya, I'm sure you and I both know what kind of person developed the efficiency leveling method, right? Obviously, they're the same kind of people as Qianli. Nitrite Radical nodded. So they can do the same thing. Then, what if two people like them work together to deal with Qianli? Matchless Wonder asked. Nitrite Radical laughed again. Boss guy, you're joking with me again. You know very well who my people are. 100 Live strategist, he's friends with Qianli. Do you think he'll do it? Maybe. Matchless Wonder said. I don't think so. Nitrite Radical shook his head. Boss guy, if 100 Live strategist can't do it, there's still Chinchi. Maybe he's no worse than Qianli? The other bosses came up and said. When they realized this was Matchless Wonder's suggestion this time, they all sighed in relief. What a pity. If two people work together, they'll have a higher chance, Matchless Wonder said. So the bosses looked at Nitrite Radical expectantly. Nitrite Radical laughed bitterly. I can call him over. If any of you can convince him, I won't stop you. You can try. A boss said. I'll contact him. Nitrite Radical didn't say anything else. He sent out a message. Not long after, everyone who had added 100 Live Strategist as a friend received a notification that he was online. He'll be here soon, Nitrite Radical said to everyone. The bosses were full of anticipation. Not long after, someone knocked on the door. The owner's first spokesperson quickly opened the door and saw a Grandmaster of Combat looking into the room cautiously. 100 Live Strategist? Please come in, please come in. The first spokesperson eagerly welcomed by Jingluan in. 100 Era's Jingluan walked in and looked around. When he saw the nitrite, he quickly waved his hand. Boss, I'm here. Everyone present was a boss, and this made everyone almost respond subconsciously. Immediately, many people stood up and carried chairs for by Shijing. You're here? Quick, sit down. The encyclopedic strategist sat down in a daze and realized that he was still a long way from the boss's Nitrite Radical. The people around him were very enthusiastic. They surrounded him, handed him water, wine, and even took out their money pouches to count the gold coins. Boss, why did you call me here? Eccentric Jingluan managed to contact Nitrite Radical through a gap in the crowd. Everyone here is the boss of our industry. We have something to ask of you. Please listen to it. Nitrite replied. With a questioning look in his eyes, Aegean Sutra turned to the group of bosses circling around him. Hello, Brother Baisher. I'm the boss of Inchi Studio, Gai Shiqing. Gai Shiqing introduced himself. Hello. 100 Live Strategist nodded at the person who spoke. Seeing this reaction, the other bosses felt that something was up. Everyone knew that Inchi and Qianli Drunken were enemies. This person was Qianli Drunken's friend, but he didn't have any special reaction after hearing Inchi's name. Maybe he was shrewd, or maybe he didn't have a good relationship with Qianli Drunken. We've invited you here because we have a favor to ask of you, Gai Shiqing said. Go ahead, 100 Live Strategist said. Help us defeat Qianli Drunken, Gai Shiqing said. Oh. 100 Live Strategist raised his eyebrows, but he still didn't have a strong reaction. Everyone felt that something was up. Many of them looked back at Nitrite Radical with dissatisfaction. Of course, the reward will be great. If you can kill Qianli Drunken once, I'll pay 20,000 gold coins. Gai Shiqing threw in the money. 20,000, 20,000. Each of us will pay 20,000. All the bosses echoed. It was an amount that ordinary players couldn't even dream of, but the bosses of the studios could easily afford it. They were indeed the richest people in the game. Thin Waist Dancer, who was a money warrior, was another concept. Wow, that's a lot. 100 Live Strategist was startled. Everyone saw that it was so easy to win, and he still said no. So, they looked back at Nitrite Radical again. Gai Shiqing had already handed over the money bags. One for each kill, okay? Seeing that Matchless Miracle Hero dared to pay first, the other bosses also generously took out their money. Some of them didn't have so much cash on them, so they immediately sent a message to their subordinates to send the money over. 100 Live Strategist looked at the money bags and swallowed. But I can't. Everyone was stunned. Why not? I can't beat him. 100 Live Strategist shook his head regretfully. The bosses were stunned again. What did this guy mean? Was he really that honest, or was he just playing dumb to tease them? Before they could react, Gai Shiqing laughed and said, Don't worry about that. We won't let you fight Qianli alone. We'll arrange a lot of help for you, and we'll even have people as good as you work with you. Won't that be unfair? 100 Live Strategist said. What does this have to do with anything? Just take the money, Gai Shiqing said. I have to help him even if it's unfair. We're friends, 100 Lives strategist said. The bosses collapsed. They couldn't keep up with this guy's train of thought. Is he doing this on purpose? Are you purposely playing dumb to tease us? Everyone turned around to look at the nitrous acid. Nitrite lowered his head and calmly pretended not to know anything. Brother 100 Lives, what do you mean? We don't understand, one of the bosses asked. 100 Lives strategist smiled. I thought you wanted me to challenge him, but you made this arrangement to deal with him. Why would I help you deal with my friend? Then challenge him. What's the difference? Someone was confused. That's a martial arts competition. It's normal. I don't have any objections if you want to sponsor me. But you'll only give me money if I win, right? Do you mind if I lose? 100 Lives strategist said. We mind. All the bosses took back their money pouches that they had handed out. Brother 100 Lives, you can think about it. Money is definitely not a problem, Guy Shiqiang said. 100 Lives strategist stood up with a smile and shook his head. No. You. Guy Shiqiang was about to say something, but 100 Lives strategist suddenly dashed forward. He reached out with his right hand and grabbed Guy Shiqiang's throat. He then used the Grandmaster of Combat skill in the game to throw Guy Shiqiang. He didn't throw Guy Shiqiang away. Instead, he was stuck on his back and fell to the ground. Then he punched Guy Shiqiang's head with his left fist. Amidst the screams of the bosses, 100 Lives strategist turned into a white light. The bosses were so shocked that they didn't know what to do. They opened their mouths and looked at 100 Lives strategist. He stood up and waved his hand. No, you can't deal with him. Even 100 of you won't be enough. Then he looked at Nitrite Radical. Boss, if there's nothing else, I'll go take a shower. Can we continue after that? No need. You can rest after you're done. Nitrite Radical smiled. 100 Lives strategist nodded and said goodbye to the other bosses who were still stunned. Then he pulled the door open and left. This. The bosses in the room couldn't say anything for a long time. Nitrite Radical sighed. I told you it wouldn't work, right? Look, it's a waste of my life. Boss, be honest. You didn't order him to do that, did you? One of the bosses asked carefully. Of course not. Nitrite Radical didn't say anything. Then why did he do that? He's Qianli's friend when he gets drunk. Boss Guy called him over and bribed him to deal with Qianli. If he failed, he would be beaten to death, Nitrite Radical said. This. The bosses started talking about this and this again. According to Nitrite Radical's explanation, 100 Lives strategist's actions were reasonable. But why did it feel so unexpected when it happened? Guy Shiqiang came back soon. His face couldn't be any darker. Everyone tactfully didn't say anything and sat quietly. Someone saw Guy Shiqiang's bench fly into the corner of the wall and hurriedly moved it back for Guy Shiqiang. Then he sat back in his seat and didn't say anything. Guy Shiqiang sat back in his seat and also didn't say anything for a long time. He was probably digesting his frustration. After a long time, he still didn't know what to say. In the end, Nitrite Radical spoke first. 100 Lives strategist. Everyone doesn't have any hope in him anymore, right? Everyone immediately shook their heads like a rattle drum. Guy Shiqiang's face, which was already as dark as it could be, became even darker. Boss Guy, from what you're saying, your Chun-Chi can stand up and help? Nitrite Radical said. It's not a big problem. Guy Shiqiang took a long time to say these 4 words. Then, I hope that Chun-Chi can always be with us when he comes online. Is that okay? Nitrite Radical said. Guy Shiqiang understood this request. He was afraid that Chun-Chi would come online to help, but secretly rush the development progress. 100 Lives strategist is not allowed to come online. Can you guarantee that? Guy Shiqiang said. It's not a big problem. Nitrite Radical also used these 4 words. Guy Shiqiang let out a long sigh as if his hatred had been slightly relieved. He couldn't help but reach out to touch his face. The punches just now, once on the left side of his face and then on the right side of his face, were still a little numb. Why was he so unlucky recently? Guy Shiqiang thought gloomily. Chapter 937. After failing to rope in Hua Li of the 100 Generations Grandmaster, the bosses only laughed in their hearts. They did not say it out loud. Unparalleled Genius was a little crazy now. Why didn't Matchless Genius log off? Matchless Genius asked. They really didn't want to say it, afraid that the answer would hurt Matchless Hero's feelings again. But after seeing his aggressive eyes, Nitrite Radical finally had to explain to him, he's going to take a shower and then he'll go offline. With a flash of white light, Matchless Genius disappeared. What happened? Everyone was shocked. He logged off. Someone noticed. What's going on? Everyone was confused. Matchless Genius returned quickly. Not only was his face black, but it was also twisted like a bun. There had to be a reason why he suddenly logged off, but no one asked. They quietly went about their own business. What was it? Naturally, it was to incite the 26 main cities. All of their studios worked together, and the rumor instantly filled the sky like goose feathers snowflakes. The players from the 26 guilds were furious, but some of the guild members didn't feel good about it. The rumors hurt them, hurt their entire guild. Of course they didn't feel good about it. But at the same time, the rumors seemed to have helped them. This time, it would be extremely smooth for them to gather people to find against the heavens. Most of the people who had this kind of conflict were rational people like Matchless Genius. The impulsive ones followed the others and didn't think too much about it. Frosty Storm, how's your guild doing? Hypothermia asked. They're scolding us. Someone from our guild has volunteered to go to Cloud City to teach against the heavens a lesson. Hypothermia said. Don't you think this is a bit strange? Matchless Genius said. But we just went to Cloud City and got defeated. Do we have to be mocked like this? Matchless Genius said. Then what do you think is more embarrassing? Hypothermia was surprised. I don't know either. He pondered for a moment. It was indeed very shameful, extremely shameful to travel thousands of miles to a place and be killed over and over again. You're hesitating? Don't tell me you don't want to get back at me? As a cleric, he didn't lose much in this incident. Instead, he had been slashed to level 40 and had even been imprisoned. He had always been an active advocate of revenge. Of course not. Experienced in life, he immediately denied it. He wished he could twist off Qianli's head and kick it like a ball. Then what's there to worry about? This is an opportunity. Hypothermia said. Only after going through thick and thin could he see the true colors of level 1 hypothermia. Just from these words alone, he knew that this was a person who was rational to the point of being cold. He actually saw the humiliation of the entire guild as an opportunity to take revenge on them. When he had dragged the entire guild down with him and was looked down upon, he had felt guilty. He had never thought that this was an opportunity. I'll contact the others. Is your second route to Cloud City still there? First Low Temperature asked. Oh, yes, he's here. Weathered Frost looked at his friend. The priest named Hongchen Yixiao was still online. Even without him, Weathered Frost would still be able to find that route. It wasn't hard to find. It was a high-level leveling area. Everyone just had to pay a small price to get there. You should also get ready. After First Low Temperature said this, there were no more messages. Weathered Frost looked at the players in the leveling area and fell into deep thought. I must get an explanation from Very Powerful. In fact, the 26 cities guilds had already unanimously passed this proposal. However, at that time, everyone had just learned the efficient leveling method and were in high spirits. Although they had expressed their determination, they still had a greater passion for leveling. But now, under the bombardment of rumors from all the studios, they couldn't continue leveling anymore. The rumors had completely covered the leveling area. They could hear the mocking laughter of strangers around them when they were killing monsters. Even the screams of the monsters that were killed sounded like they were looking down on them. One after another, guild players began to petition the guild leaders to go on an expedition to Cloud City. They wanted to destroy Very Powerful and show these idiots in the city. Of course, the guild leaders didn't have any objections. They valued the guild's honor more than anyone else in the guild. They couldn't stand the ridicule and ridicule. Moreover, almost all the guild leaders were high-end players. They couldn't use the level 40 efficient leveling method, so they didn't have any nostalgia for leveling. But they had a bit of doubt. They were going on an expedition to another city. As the saying goes, a strong dragon can't suppress a snake in its territory. Could they really get back at them with this expedition? Naturally, there were people who helped them dispel this doubt. It was the big shots who had been ridiculed. They told the guild leaders that they weren't fighting alone. The 26 cities guilds all wanted an explanation from very powerful. This was a gathering of experts and elites that hadn't happened since the beginning of the game. If they couldn't even deal with very powerful, then it seemed that everyone had to admit that the name of the guild was really very powerful. If that's the case, then that's good. The guild leaders all had the same attitude. The guilds had already begun to recruit troops. They said it was voluntary, but this time, how could they not participate? The guild was being ridiculed to this extent, and they still didn't care? Did they have any pride? Did they have any sense of responsibility? Did they have any sense of shame? Were they humans? Any players who didn't want to go or were too lazy to go would be subjected to a series of moral judgments. In the end, even those who weren't online were roared to come over and inform them of this event. They said it was voluntary, but in reality, they were already bound by morality. If they didn't go, then they weren't humans. All the guilds were level 6, with a maximum of 1050 people. Even those who weren't online were roared to come over, but they still couldn't be contacted. On average, each guild sent out 1,000 people, adding up to more than 20,000 people. Everyone shouted out loud slogans as they set off from the main city. The slogans were getting more and more exaggerated. Very powerful, do you want to die? Offend my Ming Pavilion, no matter how far you are. Bloodbath in Cloud City. In such an atmosphere, even the players who were reluctant at first were ignited. They shouted their slogans with their brothers and set off from the main city, stepping onto the journey of the expedition. This was already 2 days later. After all, rumors weren't missiles. Once they were released, they would hit the target immediately. To be able to successfully incite in 2 days, this was already the result of the combined efforts of all the studios. Success! At this time, the bosses of the studios were sitting together again. After receiving the news of the main city's army setting off, they celebrated the success of this incitement. In these 2 days, besides doing this, everyone paid special attention to whether or not the 2 talents, 100 Eras Classics and Chin Chi, were online. In the end, it seemed that both sides kept their promise. In these 2 days, the 2 talents didn't appear. At this time, the army was setting off. Victory was probably right in front of them. The boss's morale was also high. The host called for his subordinates to bring over 2 boxes of alcohol. "Boss, you aren't going to send someone a message, are you?" Matchless Genius said. "Send a message? For who?" Nitrite Radical shrugged. "Qianli's drunk isn't online right now." Guy Shirchi was speechless. Personally, he wanted to take revenge on the whole very heaven-defying. However, for the other bosses, this operation was to eradicate 1,000 miles drunk. The concept was slightly different. "Boss Matchless, you wouldn't expect such a large movement to go unnoticed by very powerful, right? Even if you don't go online, you'll see it on the forums." Nitrite Radical said. "I'm just afraid that some people have ulterior motives." Matchless Genius said. When the other bosses saw that these 2 guys were fighting again, they were afraid that one of them would go crazy and come up with some stupid idea to ruin their business, so they immediately came up to interrupt. "With these 20,000 people, it should be enough to take care of Qianli's drunk, right?" One person said. "Will Qianli's drunk be scared and not dare to show up?" "If he really doesn't show up, we can continue with our business. Isn't that right, Boss Matchless Genius?" Matchless Genius laughed. "I say, at this point, don't hide anything. Bring out all the experts you have. These 20,000 people are strong, but their goal is very powerful. Moreover, it's an away game. There's no guarantee that Cloud City won't have any resistance. Our goal is very simple, and that is to get Qianli's drunk. So, shouldn't everyone do their part and ensure that we can target him in the midst of the chaos? That makes sense." The bosses all nodded. These studios would usually nurture such a team of experts, not for PvP, but mainly to hunt bosses and so on. Other than buying low and selling high in the market, studios also had a system of self-production. From low-end materials to high-end materials that could only be obtained through luck, they would dabble in everything. What about you, Mr. Guy? Can we get to know your Chin-Chi first? A boss suggested. Are you interested? Matchless Genius laughed. Of course. Okay, I'll get everyone to get to know him first. Matchless Genius was very pleased. The bosses all nodded, but some of them had a sinister smile on their faces. Done. Yeah, he's here. The revival point is also set up. Are you sure you didn't get the wrong person? Don't worry, players don't usually come here. As long as a rogue comes, it'll definitely be him. That's good. The bosses sent messages sneakily while chatting with the unparalleled heroes. I'm online. I'll be right there, Unparalleled Wonder said to everyone. Chin-Chi had logged in after a while. The bosses all nodded as they continued to smile mysteriously. Get everyone ready, we'll be here soon. We've already prepared. You're so annoying. Damn it, let's get rid of this Chin-Chi. Let's see what else he can do to threaten us. Chapter 938. To be able to get to this point, who would be a brainless person? Qianli was a big problem when he was drunk. He needed to be eliminated, but this was only Matchless Hero's problem. Everyone else was tied up and threatened by him. For everyone, the most direct trouble was the unparalleled genius, Chin-Chi, who was his subordinate. Matchless Hero couldn't be eliminated by force, but Chin-Chi could. Without the resources to develop more efficient leveling methods, what else could Matchless Hero use to threaten everyone? They were both getting rid of a person, but one side was being coerced and forced, while the other side was taking the initiative and controlling everything. The bosses were very clear-headed. They chose the latter without hesitation, which was to kill Chin-Chi. In XXX City, Chin-Chi came to a deserted street with the coordinates given by Unparalleled Wonder. Deserted streets were quite common in the game. There were too many deserted corners like this in every main city. Chin-Chi counted the coordinates and appeared at a corner of the street. He immediately sensed something strange around him. A rogue in stealth. How could there be a stealthy thief on such a deserted street? Chin-Chi immediately looked in the direction he sensed. The rogue had already sent a message, "Do it." Doors on both sides of the street suddenly opened, and a large number of players rushed out. The room where the bosses of the studio gathered was still filled with laughter. Everyone's sinister smiles flashed occasionally. Chin-Chi would be killed, but they would never admit it even if Matchless Hero could sense that it was them. They were different from the players. They would always hide their evil intentions in their bellies. This was how they dealt with each other. If they killed until blood was spilled, they would be at a disadvantage among their group. Just like Nitrite, what kind of relationship did he have with the extremely heaven-defying and 1,000 miles drunk? No one was sure, but they were sure that even if they had a relationship, it wasn't a real one. Nitrite had found a way to deal with Matchless Hero. He was using someone else to do his dirty work. Everyone waited for the news of Chin-Chi's death amidst the laughter. They were looking forward to Matchless Hero's expression. Would he be forced to go offline again? Everyone guessed. Dang, dang, dang. Suddenly, someone knocked on the door, and the laughter in the room stopped. Probably, Matchless Hero said with a smile. The owner of the house was a little stunned. Under everyone's surprised gaze, he opened the door. The person standing outside the door was an assassin with standard assassin equipment. However, his face was still stained with blood. When he walked into the room, beads of blood slid down his hands. There were battles in the game, so of course, there would be some damage. However, the system refreshed the damage very quickly. The bleeding setting was also to add some realism and excitement. It was not convenient to be too serious about this issue. If they were to get serious, the entire world would be drenched in blood. This was a world of slaughter. Every player had to kill countless NPC monsters and people every day. It was only natural that the bloodstains would be constantly refreshed. But Chen-Chi appeared in front of the bosses with bloodstains, which could only mean one thing. He killed very quickly and came very quickly. Coming! Matchless Hero stood up and greeted him warmly. Then he noticed the bloodstains on his face and hands. He asked in surprise, "What happened to you?" "Oh, I met some troublemakers on the way. Don't worry, my HP will be refreshed soon." Chen-Chi looked at the blood dripping down his right hand and ignored it. Unparalleled Genius's face darkened again. The other bosses reacted quickly. The landlord immediately expressed his concern. "Troublemaker? What happened? Where did you meet them? Their HP hasn't been refreshed yet." "It was not long ago. At the end of the street. There are people hiding in the houses on both sides," Chen-Chi said. "On the street? That's strange. There are usually no people on this street." The landlord was still pretending. At this time, the ambushers sent a message, "We failed." "How did that happen?" The bosses quickly asked. "He's too strong. We can't beat him." "You can't beat him with dozens of experts?" We really can't. He's too strong, really?" The subordinate quickly explained. It wasn't that he didn't work hard, but the opponent was too strong. The bosses wanted to laugh, but their smiles were a bit unnatural. Even if they forced it, it would still be bitter. Matchless Hero wasn't an idiot. He must have guessed something. This time they had outsmarted themselves. Even if this peerless genius pretended not to know, he would still make things difficult for them in future cooperation. This was how they dealt with each other. This kind of dirty trick was something that everyone should be aware of. There was no need to argue about it. The bloodstains on Chen-Chi's body had finally been refreshed. After saying goodbye to everyone in the room, he asked Matchless Hero what he wanted. "It's like this. Our high-efficiency leveling business has run into some trouble. A player called Qianli Drunk has come and caused trouble for us. We have to deal with him and we need to use some force. We would like to ask for your help," Matchless Hero said. "I see. I was wondering why we didn't need to research for the next few days." "No problem, Qianli Drunk. I've heard of this person before. Wasn't he the one who came up with the high-efficiency leveling business? It seems like he's a professional like me," Chen-Chi said. "Are you confident?" Matchless Hero asked. "He's so famous now, so he should be quite strong. But I don't understand why he chose to be a mage. This class will restrict him," Chen-Chi said. When it came to PK, these bosses were not experts. At this time, they were just surprised by Chen-Chi's attitude towards this matter. From Matchless Hero's tone, it seemed like he hadn't told Chen-Chi beforehand. He had only mentioned it in front of everyone, and yet Chen-Chi had agreed so easily. He didn't even need to pay? "Do you want to continue?" At this time, the bosses were privately communicating with each other. "My subordinates said that this guy killed more than 20 people, and now he has a lot of PvP points. If we want to reduce his level, we'll have a good chance," another person said. They had set up an ambush for Chen-Chi, but they didn't think that they would be able to kill him in one go. After all, once he entered the safe zone, there was nothing they could do. Matchless Hero had the support of a teleportation scroll, so he could just sneak in and give away a scroll. They only wanted to kill Chen-Chi to send a signal to Matchless Hero so that he would know what was good for him and retreat. However, their first ambush failed. Half of the experts in the two houses were killed by Chen-Chi in an instant. The other half knew that they weren't a match for him, so they quickly retreated. Now, Chen-Chi had more than 20 PvP points and was right next to them. Should they ambush him and kill him as soon as he came out? "I wonder how many experts will need to deal with this guy," someone said. "If only that 100 Generations strategist was here. That guy is strange. Even if he's here, who knows what he'll do? What if he's friends with this guy and says that we're going to deal with his friends? He'll beat us all up. Damn it, are we going to do it or not? Let's do it. This guy already has more than 20 PvP points. If he kills a few more, he'll have more than 30 PvP points. Even the system guards will be mobilized. How can we escape then?" The bosses weren't clueless about the rules of the game. Call for reinforcements. The bosses didn't give up and gathered their men again. They drew their swords in the message, but on the surface, they expressed their concern for Chen-Chi like a spring breeze. They praised Qin for helping them eliminate Qianli's drunk. We don't have anything to do for the next few days. We'll contact you when we're ready to take action. Matchless Hero had finished talking to Qin. All right. Qin nodded. Then I'll leave first. You're leaving already? Don't you want to stay a little longer? The bosses continued to be enthusiastic. No, see you guys later. Qin was also very polite to everyone's enthusiasm. Get ready, I'm coming out. The boss drew his sword in the message. Goodbye. After saying goodbye to everyone, Qin pulled open the door and left. The boss saw him off. The moment he closed the door, he could already see the flashes of weapons and the fluctuations of spells. The door closed, and the bosses fell silent, waiting for the news to come in. After a few seconds, someone received the message. We missed. How did we miss again? The bosses were flustered. He ran away. How can he run away when we're surrounded like this? He used a strange skill. He left a straw man in the encirclement and flashed away. We can't catch up. He's very fast. The bosses were silent. They had missed again. They didn't know when they would find him again. Should they continue? Matchless Hero looked at the bosses and suddenly smiled meaningfully. This is Qin. Do you guys know him? Yes, everyone answered dryly. He's skilled. I can give him the strongest equipment according to his needs. Good steel should be used on the blade. Otherwise, it would be a waste of resources, Matchless Hero said. The bosses were quite unhappy, but the biggest difference between them and the players was that they wouldn't let their emotions get the better of them. They would stab someone in the back even if they wanted to. On the surface, they still had to be polite. Everyone nodded. Then we'll leave it to him. What about you guys? Should we also arrange for some experts to act according to the situation? Matchless Hero asked. Everyone agreed casually. All right, let's watch the players from the 26 cities pass first. We'll contact them later? Matchless Hero got up and said goodbye to everyone. We'll contact them again, everyone said. Goodbye. Matchless Hero mimicked Qin's farewell tone and left. Damn it, should we behead him? A boss asked. What's the point? Someone said. To them, fighting and killing was just a means, not an end. Those who felt satisfied killing someone were the players. Chapter 939. Although the bosses were angry at Matchless Hero, they were still able to hold it in when it came to business. Just like how Matchless Hero obviously knew that they were plotting against Qin. Who knew how angry he was, but wasn't he just pretending to be cool? Everyone was the same. Big brother, don't laugh at second brother, because everyone was the same. The army of the 26 cities attacking was big news. During this period where there weren't any new efficient leveling methods on the market, it attracted a lot of attention on the forums. There were gossipers in the 26 cities. They talked about this matter and the content wasn't far off from the truth. This was all thanks to the rumors created by the studio. If it was anyone else, they wouldn't know so much about it. How could the slightest movement on the forums escape Brother Yu's eyes? When this brother was on the forums every day, he would open tens of windows to gossip. As soon as the gossip of the 26 cities came online, Brother Yu would notice it. If he didn't panic, then it wouldn't be Brother Yu's personality. He hurriedly scanned through the forums and ran back into the game. He went online and yelled, "The players of the 26 cities are moving out. Don't make a fuss about nothing. Isn't this something that will happen sooner or later?" Han family young master was as calm as ever. How is it so fast? Didn't they go back to train the efficient leveling method for a few days? How come they're back? I've seen the news on the forums. This time, they're even stronger than last time. Each city has around 1,000 players and they're all from the same guild. Brother Yu said. How arrogant. Han family young master sighed. What are you guys doing? Brother Yu asked. Leveling. Everyone said the same thing. They had just learned the level 50 efficient leveling method. Recently, everyone had been leveling so much that they didn't want to go offline anymore. Their experience had skyrocketed, and there was only one word to describe it. They knew that this type of pleasure would quickly disappear due to numbness. At this time, they were still in a good mood, so they seized the time to farm more experience. The guys from the 26 cities are about to attack. Brother Yu said. Brother Yu, why are you in such a hurry? You just saw the news, right? It'll take at least a day for them to crawl over here. The experts were addicted to leveling and didn't seem to care about the mundane matters of PK. Are you already prepared? Brother Yu sent a private message to Han Family Young Master. He's not here yet? Let's take a look first. Han Family Young Master said. Brother Yu was at his wit's end. Since he's already online, let's go and level up. To be honest, Brother Yu also likes the thrill of experience soaring. Leveling area. This group of experts were all grinding in the level 50 leveling area. Yutian Shenming was also very active right now because when Gu Fei came back that day, he also brought Glue back. Glue was already very experienced in the archer's leveling efficiency, so he helped Yutian Shenming do some research. Yutian Shenming was rich, so he didn't say anything and went to buy a high-quality crossbow. After equipping it, he showed off his strength. The archer with him was Reflection Years. Although he was one of the 3 big players of 4 Cs, when it came to family wealth, he couldn't compare to Yutian Shenming. When he bought the crossbow, his hand was still a bit shaky. With a tremble, the best crossbow in Cloud City was taken by Yutian Shenming. The other one Reflection Years bought was much cheaper than Yutian Shenming's, but it was also a lot worse. At this time, there was a gap between his leveling and Yutian Shenming's, which made Reflection Years extremely regretful. He contacted his friends outside the city to see if he could get a better one. Apart from these original people, South Azure Sword and the others were also leveling here. The development work had been stopped for a few days, so this team was basically on a long vacation. After flying around the 10 main cities with Gu Fei, they returned to level 50 with everyone else. Unsworn Sword, Reflection Years, and Brother Windwalking were in another corner. Compared to the group of people who were very ostentatious, they were much more restrained. Each one of them looked pitiful. If no one said anything, absolutely no one would think that these 3 were actually the 3 big players of the biggest guilds in Cloud City. Of course, the biggest guild in Cloud City was gradually becoming a bit of a question mark. Because of the previous battle, several big guilds were depressed, and very Defiant's reputation rose. Once again, Gu Fei implemented an efficient leveling method. Did his reputation still need to be mentioned? If 4 Cs was said to be the biggest, it could only be said that his level was high. In terms of reputation, it couldn't compare to Very Defiant, and in terms of killing intent, it couldn't compare to Very Defiant. These few days, Unsworn Sword wasn't very happy leveling. He thought a lot, especially about how to get along with Very Defiant. Old Yun, those guys are going to make a move on us again. On this side of the leveling formation, Han Family Young Master suddenly mentioned this matter to Yun Zhongmu. Really? Then come. This is great. Before, when we were killing in Moonlit Night City, we were just killing outside the city. Now, we're killing in the real world. Amazing, really amazing. Yun Zhongmu sighed. Currently, around 1,000 people have gone out from each city, and they're all members of level 6 guilds. Out of the 26 main cities, if you walk over, Moonlit Night City is a place you must pass. Han Family Young Master said. Oh, this is quite a scene. Yun Zhongmu was a bit moved. 26 level 6 guilds working together. He knew what this meant. Even his 10 guild alliance back in the day wasn't this strong, whether it was in terms of numbers or quality. You should still have friends in Moonlit Night City, right? Let us know if anyone comes to Moonlit Night City. Han Family Young Master said. Of course I do. I'm just leaving, I'm not dead yet. Yun Zhongmu patted his chest. The brothers that came to Cloud City with him were all willing. It didn't mean that they didn't come with him because they didn't have a good relationship with him. People always had different ways of thinking. Some people just couldn't bear to part with the foundation they built in Moonlit Night City. Of course, these people were still his brothers. Now that Yun Zhongmu sent a message to them, asking them to help pay attention to this matter, they naturally all agreed. Do you have any ideas? Brother Yu was leveling, but he was also thinking about this matter. When he saw Han Family Young Master starting to make arrangements, he went to train next to Han Family Young Master. What do you think? Han family young master smiled at Brother Yu. Guess my ass. Brother Yu was depressed, but he only grumbled in his heart. He then went to Sword Demon to discuss this matter. After a while, more and more people learned of this news. Unsworn Sword, who was grinding on the other side, had obviously heard the news as well. He sheathed his sword and came over. Unbelievably, he had found Sword Ghost in his territory. Boss Sword Demon, I heard that those guys are going to cause trouble again. Unsworn Sword didn't think that they were here to give him equipment like before. 26 cities, 26 level 6 guilds. This wasn't a joke. Big guilds meant that they had great experts. Even a normal member wouldn't be any weaker than Unhindered. Being from the same guild meant that there was cooperation and tacit understanding. 26 guilds, this was the number of people. How could Unsworn Sword dare to provoke such an opponent? Even if he mobilized all of his friends and family in Cloud City, they still wouldn't be a match for them. He didn't know if he could take them down. Yes, they're coming. Sword Demon nodded. How are you guys going to deal with them? Unsworn Sword asked. We'll see when they get here. Sword Demon said. Unsworn Sword trembled. If they got here, would they make it in time? If you ask me, we'll definitely go through Black Dragon Mountain Range. We all know that route. If we set up an ambush, no matter how many experts come, we won't be afraid. Unsworn Sword said. That geographical advantage is too obvious. I think that the other side dared to come again because they thought of this point. There isn't only one route between Moonlit City and Cloud City. Sword Demon said. There's another route? Where is it? Unsworn Sword asked. Go that way. Do you know Cloud Valley? That leveling area is connected to Cloud City and Moonlit City. Sword Demon pointed in a direction. Cloud Valley. The monsters over there are level 60 to 65, right? How do you know? Unsworn Sword was surprised. I heard Qianli say that he leveled there and said that he can go all the way through. Judging from the direction, that way is definitely Moonlit City's territory. Sword Demon said. This information was indeed provided by Gu Fei when they were discussing this topic. Unsworn Sword would never be surprised by what happened to Gu Fei. Wasn't it just leveling with level 60 monsters? What was there to be surprised about? Even though everyone was only level 40, even though these high-end players could only level 50 monsters after obtaining the leveling efficiency method, that was Qianli's drunk. It was something that happened to Qianli's drunk. Knowing the name was enough, there was no need to explain anything else. This time, I think they'll pass through that way. Level 60 monsters can still be killed by experts in a team. Even though leveling isn't efficient, passing through is not a problem. Sword Demon said. That's true. Unsworn Sword nodded. If they formed a team, Unhindered could also go to the level 60 leveling area. Players changing classes at level 40 was a leap in strength. Level 30 players forming a team to kill level 50 monsters was very difficult, but level 40 players forming a team to kill level 60 monsters was a different story. This was because there was a class change at level 40. This class change had corrections and enhancements. In short, their strength greatly increased, reaching level 10. I've been to Cloud Valley. It's a very large place. It sounds like a valley, but it's not a long and narrow road. Unsworn Sword said. When their guild reached level 4, someone suggested forming a team to go to the higher level areas to farm. The places they went to were the level 60 Cloud Valley. After going there, they concluded that the gains did not make up for the losses. If it dropped equipment, it depended on luck. If it dropped materials, no one would accept them if they were too high level, so what was the point of spending time farming? As for the money dropped, the higher level monsters dropped copper coins, but no one had ever become rich from the copper coins dropped by small monsters. That small amount of money was not even enough to buy bread and fruits. In the end, no one mentioned such an activity anymore. Occasionally, some bored players would form parties to try their luck and have some fun. So far, traversing the 4 seas had yet to find any valuable items by trying their luck in such a boring manner. That land, I don't think there's anything to use. Unsworn Sword said after thinking about it carefully. Sword Demon nodded. Butterfly Knot, transitional chapter, it really is a transitional chapter. You see, I've written the name of the chapter. Actually, I really want to call this chapter so-and-so, but there have been too many so-and-so recently, it's a little annoying. Chapter 940. Sword Demon's calm demeanor made Unsworn Sword a little confused. Such a strong opponent had come knocking on his door, yet he was still so calm. Had he already thought of a backup plan? Unsworn Sword guessed. These guys aren't planning to run away, are they? Unsworn Sword suddenly thought. There weren't many people who were very strong and they were rich. It wasn't impossible for the entire guild to use a teleportation scroll to travel. Could it be that these guys were waiting for Qianli to travel to Cloud City and directly use the teleportation scroll to travel to the other side of the world? Damn, that's too lewd. Unsworn Sword couldn't help but shout. What did you say? Sword Demon looked at Unsworn Sword in shock. Nothing. Unsworn Sword hurriedly said. Coincidentally, a system notification popped up, and Unsworn Sword hurriedly changed the topic. Qianli is here. That's right, the time after dinner was the stable time for Gu Fei to play the game. There were usually no exceptions. However, after developing the efficiency leveling method that day, he went offline and was called back to develop it again. After that, Gu Fei disappeared for 2 consecutive days. Only now did he resume his habit of going online and going offline on time. This kind of controlled gaming attitude made these veterans who spent most of their time in the game look down on him, especially Thin Waist Dance. That day, she asked Gu Fei to teach her the level 60 efficiency leveling method. Gu Fei said he would teach her the next day, but after that, she didn't see him for 2 consecutive days. Thin Waist Dance felt that she was being toyed with, so she threatened to find Gu Fei and hire an assassin to kill him. However, later on, Yutian Shenming and the others comforted her, telling her that Gu Fei's skills weren't limited to the game, and that he was even more terrifying in real life. The assassin industry was already declining, so there was no need to create any more pressure for the assassins. It wasn't easy for them to make a living. Thin Waist Dance endured for 2 days, and finally waited for Gu Fei to come online. She immediately sent a message, "Get your ass to the leveling area." What? Gu Fei replied. Efficient leveling method. Slim Waist Dance felt that the message could not express her emotions at all. If only she had a phone. At this moment, she could cut off the phone line with her curses, and the wireless signal would disappear. Oh, wait a moment, Gu Fei replied. What kind of cultivation did this person have? He was so angry, yet he kept saying, what? And, oh, wait a minute, as if nothing had happened. Was he not venting his anger clearly enough? Gu Fei exited the revival point and headed towards the leveling area outside the city. Over the past few days, his image in Cloud City had greatly changed, especially for players above level 40. When they saw Gu Fei, they felt a sense of familiarity. Walking on the street, greetings of Boss Qianli could be heard everywhere, and all of them were sincere. Occasionally, a newbie who didn't know what was good would ask, "Who is this?" and would immediately be beaten into a bun by the veterans next to them. Fuck, you don't even know Boss Qianli. Get out of Cloud City. Receiving a hero's treatment along the way, Gu Fei finally arrived at the leveling area. The atmosphere here was very different. In order to avoid unexpected disasters, Sword Demon and the others all stayed far away. They saw Thin Waist Dance standing at the side of the leveling area with her hands on her hips. Seeing Gu Fei approach, Thin Waist Dance was ready to explode, but she saw Gu Fei wave at her. Let's go. Go for what? To learn the efficient leveling method. Didn't you say last time that you wanted to learn the level 60 efficient leveling method? Gu Fei said. Thin Waist Dance suddenly didn't know how to vent her anger. He came here and didn't say any nonsense. He went straight to the point. If she was still worried about tomorrow, would she seem too petty? Just as she was thinking, Gu Fei didn't even care if she moved or not. He strode towards the direction of level 60. Thin Waist Dance could only roll her eyes and forget about it. The two of them walked over one after the other. The others suddenly jumped up and followed. Gu Fei looked back at everyone and asked curiously, "You guys want to go too?" "Just to broaden my horizons." Everyone said, "There's no difference. After teaching you guys, you can also fight, some people." Gu Fei said, "Why some people?" Unscathed in battle asked. "You need agility." Gu Fei said, "Unscathed in battle" was sad. He clearly wasn't among the some people. Yutian Shenming was naturally very excited. He shouted, I can, and instantly attracted the attention of the three brothers from Unsworn Sword. What could he do? The three of them exchanged glances and immediately came forward. Unsworn Sword was the most shameless among the three of them, so he was naturally the one to speak. "Brothers, where are you going?" "To a level 60 place. Is Guild Master Unsworn interested?" Gu Fei could actually see that Unsworn Sword was feeling uneasy among them, but he didn't know how to make him feel otherwise. In any case, he treated everyone equally, unlike a brat like Yutian Shenming who would look down on this and that for no reason. Level 60. Even level 60 is possible? Unsworn Sword exclaimed. Some people can, some people can't. And even if they can, they might not be very efficient. Gu Fei said, "Let's broaden our horizons." Unsworn Sword rubbed his hands with a smile. The group of people went on their way. On the way, brother, you shared information with Gu Fei. Those guys from the 26 cities have gathered 1,000 people from each city and are heading towards us. Gu Fei immediately stopped when he heard this. His eyes lit up. Is that so? Then we have to go and stop them, right? Are the teleportation scrolls ready? Everyone was sweating. This guy was really crazy. Hearing that the opponent was 1, 100, 500, or 1,000, his reaction was the same. Don't panic. Wait for them to come. Sword Demon said. At this moment, Unsworn Sword was even more certain that Sword Spectre and the others had already made up their minds. So the group of people went to the level 60 leveling area, which was coincidentally Cloud Valley. If they could not deal with this monster with their strength, then no one in the parallel world would be able to deal with it. The others casually fought the monsters. Gu Fei led a monster to research. This was the main leveling area. The monsters were already mature. At this time, Slender Waist Dance only needed to change her weapon to try. It didn't take long for her to figure it out. Sword Demon, Cloud Twilight, Blackwater, and the other thieves also came up to learn. In the end, they discovered that it was just as Gu Fei said. They could learn the technique, but after learning it, it wasn't very efficient. After all, Slender Waist Dance's equipment was higher than that of high-end players. Some of her equipment wasn't even available in the studio. A warrior can't do anything. Gu Fei looked at Unscathed in Battle, who was looking at him pitifully and helplessly, explained, "If I slow down to your level, there are a few things I can't do. For example." Gu Fei slowed down his pace to demonstrate. As expected, the monster turned around and slashed at him. Gu Fei suddenly increased his speed and dodged it. If it was a warrior, he definitely wouldn't be able to do it. Actually, to dodge, you don't have to move. But only by moving can the players forcibly remember it. If you move your body to dodge, it requires reflexes and coordination. These aren't things the game can give people. So, normal people can't do it. Gu Fei continued to demonstrate and explain. Okay, it's getting more and more profound. We know you're a professional, so don't be so long-winded. Those who can fight and train, stay here. The rest of you, let's go forward. I'll take a look at the terrain here. Han Family Young Master had never been to this Cloud Valley before. With his personality, of course, he wouldn't follow a team to do something so boring like fighting high-level monsters and trying his luck. Unsworn Sword had fantasized about getting some powerful equipment from a level 60 area. In fact, he had been to this place many times, so he was a little familiar with it. He acted as a guide along the way, but as they walked, he ran out of words. Obviously, the team he brought didn't go too deep. They were just fighting at the border. Han Family Young Master walked and looked around. In the end, he frowned and shook his head. This place is very boring. After saying this, he looked at Gu Fei and Unsworn Sword. Are there any bosses here? Never seen one. The two shook their heads. In fact, it was useless even if they had seen one. Other than quest NPCs, The bosses in the parallel world were all heroes that walked around the leveling area. They would never settle down in one place. Boring, boring, let's go back. Han family young master waved his hand to signal everyone to go back. Brother, you didn't want to give up. Aren't we going to continue looking around? Maybe there's something worth using up ahead. Before Han family young master asked. Brother, you was startled. To deal with the people from the 26 cities that are coming. Who said we're going to use this place to deal with them? I've never been here before, so I'm just curious. Han family young master said. Everyone was speechless. If they knew that they were just escorting this guy, who the hell would have followed them? Everyone thought that he wanted to study this place to see if there was anything that could cause trouble for the other party. After all, this was definitely the path that the other party had to pass through. What are you planning? Brother, you mumbled to Unscathed in Battle. I don't know, but I'm ready. Unscathed in Battle said. Ready for what? Brother, you was confused. Unscathed in Battle took out something and showed it to Brother you. Brother, you took a look. It was a teleportation scroll. The coordinates written on it were already set. The horizontal and vertical coordinates were extremely far away from Cloud City's coordinates. It was clearly a main city on the diagonal of Cloud City. Brother, you wiped his sweat. Damn, you're really good. Hey, safety first. Do you want to get one too? Unscathed in Battle asked. Brother, you shook his head. Unscathed in Battle gave him a thumbs up. It was unknown if he was really praising him or not, but Brother, you quickly followed up. I'll just be with you. Unscathed in Battle coughed up blood. Then there are still 2 more spots. Who do you want to arrange for? Stop bullshitting. Brother, you rolled his eyes. I'm just saying it. Don't tell me they won't be able to run when they come. After thinking about it, Brother, you shivered. With Han family young master's viciousness, it wasn't impossible. They came from so far away. Once we teleport them. Brother, you had already imagined the scene of 20,000 people coughing up blood. Unbeknownst to him, Unsworn Sword had already fantasized about this scene before. Chapter 941. Brother, you was still worried. Unscathed in Battle's teleportation scroll escape plan gave him an idea. He also knew that Han family young master could come up with such a shameless plan, so he went to ask Han family young master. In the end, he got a middle finger from Han family young master and a look of disdain. You're really shameless. Brother, you ran away in tears. Just what plan do you have? Tell me if it's possible. Others can endure it, but I'll be killed by my curiosity. Brother, you, whose curiosity couldn't be satisfied, was dispirited. Several times, he was almost hacked to death by monsters. Fortunately, there were many experts with him, who saved him time and time again. Cloud Valley wasn't a place where they could make a fuss. Apart from Skinny Waist Dancer, who was addicted to leveling like a normal person, everyone else returned. After returning to the level 50 leveling area, everyone continued to level. Gu Fei returned to the main city because he had to go offline again. Cloud Valley was actually quite far away. After going back and forth like this, several hours had passed. Normally, Gu Fei wouldn't waste so much time on his own, but this time, he was with everyone else. Didn't the party have short legs? After going back and forth for a night, it was as if they didn't do anything. These guys, do they really have confidence in their hearts, or what? Time's Reflection was a sensitive person. In reality, he had also been thinking about whether or not the 26 Cities Alliance would attack them. Now that he saw Very Defiant's attitude, he was also very confused. He quietly discussed this matter with Unsworn Sword and Wind Walking. They're going to run. Unsworn Sword said quietly. What? Reflected Years said. Teleportation Scroll. Unsworn Sword said, think about it, the 26 Cities players are all moving out with their entire guild. They definitely can't afford to use teleportation scrolls. But Very Against the Heavens, they have money and there aren't many of them. They can afford to teleport. They're coming from afar, so they can just teleport away and wait for news. Fuck, killing without spilling blood. If I was that Chinli coming from afar, I'd want to die and go back. Is this your guess or what? Reflection of Time asked. I saw it. Unsworn Sword said, "Just now in Cloud Valley, I saw Unscathed in Battle show Brother you something. It's a teleportation scroll. There's no mistaking it. They're waiting for someone to come and then teleport away." "Damn, it's so shameless." Feng Xing sighed. "Yeah, no wonder we've never had the upper hand against them. We're just too honest," Reflection of Years said. "Yes, we are too righteous." The three brothers hugged each other and cried. On very overpowered side, after leveling up, the Han family young master spoke in the channel. "Just now, brother, you came up with a rather shameless idea. How about we all listen to it?" Everyone raised their eyebrows. "Brother you, tell me your shameless idea again." Han family young master said. "Damn it, it's Wushang's idea." Brother you hurriedly explained. "What thing?" Unscathed in Battle asked. He really didn't know what he was talking about. "Teleportation scroll." Brother you reminded him. "Teleportation scroll? What's that?" This time, Unscathed in Battle knew, but he pretended not to know. His idea was already considered shameless, so it was better to let Brother you take the blame. Brother you cried. There was really no way to deal with such a shameless person. He could only tell the truth himself. Wow, so shameless. As expected of Brother you, to be able to come up with such an idea. Yutian Shenming said. "It's Wushang." Brother you weakly insisted. Changing to a main city, traveling and killing monsters is actually not bad." Yun Zhongmu was now also a member of the elite group. This mercenary group channel was like a heaven-defying high-level meeting room. It wasn't just Yun Zhongmu, even the core members of the guild like Yun Xiang were added. At that time, Yun Xiang was quite excited. Joining this mercenary group was something that he had dreamed of doing for a long time. Of course, running away wasn't Cloud Twilight style, but now that he was part of this team, he felt the need to learn how shameless these people were sometimes. As a result, Cloud Twilight commented on this shameless idea from the perspective of an appreciator, even though in his heart, he despised this idea for being shameful. "Brother you, try to contact them and see if you can get this many teleportation scrolls." Han family young master said. "Is there anything I can't get?" Brother you was confused, but he still did as he was told. He immediately sent a message and contacted Yun Teng, who had been doing business with them recently. "Yun Teng doesn't have any. Damn, looks like they've all been bought by us." Brother you said. Ever since they became rich, everyone had teleportation scrolls. They even used a lot of them in the war, and they bought them all from Yun Teng. Of course, Brother you knew more than just Yun Teng. Then he contacted two more, but received a reply that they didn't have any. Strange. Then we asked two more, but they still didn't have any. What's going on? Have all the teleportation scrolls been bought out? As Brother you said this, he suddenly came to a realization. It can't be that they've all been bought out by those guys from the 26 cities, right? They pretended to walk over, but they're actually going to teleport directly? Brother you, can you not always let your imagination run wild? Han family young master said. Once in a while, a rich person in a guild will make such a big move. I can believe it, but among the 26 guilds, do they all have such a rich person? Then what's going on? Brother you said. Nothing much, it's just that my deduction has once again come true. Han family young master said. What? We've already become enemies with all of the studios. Han family young master said. So the reason why I can't buy teleportation scrolls now is because these studios are restricting us from leaving? Brother you suddenly came to a realization. When we let Qianli out, I guess that they might join hands to become enemies with us. After all, they are studios. Now that we've cut off their source of income, how could they not go all out? Han family young master said. Everyone broke out in a cold sweat. What kind of words were those? Let Qianli out? Was Qianli a dog? Luckily Qianli wasn't here right now. If he was, he would definitely come over and beat you up like a dog. But, aren't we targeting Yingqi? Brother you said. Baisher's efficiency leveling method is only a collaboration with Yun Teng, but after 30 cities, the efficiency leveling method isn't Yun Teng's trademark. It's clear that more and more studios are getting involved in this business, but these studios can only be considered as distributors. They don't have the technology to develop the efficiency leveling method. However, Ing-Chi's involvement later on is different. Ing-Chi also has the technology to develop the efficiency leveling method. Han Family Young Master said. Also, did you guys notice? The 100 Lives Classic that has been online for a long time hasn't appeared for the past few days. I've asked Jian Nanyu and the others, and they said that the development work has stopped for a while. Han Family Young Master said. Why don't you ask Yunteng? Brother, you asked. Yunteng's people have turned off the news. Han Family Young Master said. As expected, there's a problem. But how did Yunteng get involved with Ing-Chi? Are they going to team up against us? Brother, you said. Don't think too highly of yourself. We aren't much to Yunteng. Maybe we're just a knife to deal with Ing-Chi. We used Yunteng to deal quite a bit of damage to Ing-Chi, but at the same time, Yunteng also gained more benefits from it. This is why they're willing to help us in secret. What else do you think it's for? Friendship? Han Family Young Master said. So that's how it is. Brother Yu was silent. He admitted that Han Family Young Master's words were very realistic, but this reality wasn't welcomed by others. We don't know what happened at the studio, but from the fact that the teleportation scrolls aren't going to be traded to you, this matter is definitely being pushed by the studio. Han Family Young Master said. Then what if someone else buys it? Brother Yu said. Don't worry, they've definitely stopped the teleportation scroll business. Han Family Young Master said. Then what if it really isn't one of our people? If they buy it in large quantities, they'll know who it is. Don't forget that all the studios are working together. Their information network is terrifying. As for buying it in small quantities, it doesn't matter if they reject it. That little bit of loss is nothing to the studio. Han Family Young Master said. How about it? Have you satisfied your curiosity? Han Family Young Master asked. Will you die if you don't look down on people? Brother Yu was depressed. After saying so much, how do we solve this situation? Unscathed in Battle asked. It's a real battle. In the end, we still have to focus on the people. The studio can only push from the back. Let them push. Han Family Young Master smiled. What do you mean? A group of people asked each other. Damn it, they're pretending to be mysterious. What do you mean? Unscathed in Battle said. Everyone don't worry. This time, nothing will happen. Sword Demon suddenly said. Everyone was shocked. Even Sword Demon said something. What made him so confident? Sword Demon, what's going on? In an instant, Sword Demon received all the private messages from his brothers. In a faraway foreign land, Unscathed Guild had already conquered city after city. Unscathed and his brothers kept in touch. Everyone was progressing smoothly. Along the way, the team's morale was high. It was obvious that the rumors in the main city had hurt everyone deeply. Qianli hasn't appeared since he got drunk. Some people were worried that Qianli would get drunk and bring that perverted group to cause trouble again. In the end, no one met them. Everyone, see you in Moonlit City. See you in Moonlit City. A few days later, the expedition army arrived in Moonlit City. Here, the big characters that had been bullied for the first time, as well as the leaders of the various guilds, finally gathered together. This expedition army meeting was officially held for the first time. In the meeting, the representatives of the various guilds strongly condemned Unscathed. Although Unscathed was actually fighting back passively, at this moment, no one would object if they said anything bad about Unscathed. The second important content was the agreed time to go online the next day. Everyone was prepared to go online together tomorrow and kill their way through the leveling area to Cloud City. Then, the various guilds went offline while shouting slogans. At the same time, Unscathed and the studio both received news. They had arrived in Moonlit City. Chapter 942. After the army meeting, everyone went offline. The next morning, everyone went online. It was the weekend, the perfect day for a group operation. The various guilds gathered their troops and marched out of Moonlit Night City in a grandiose manner. Even the arrogant players of Moonlit City were intimidated by these 20,000 or so elite experts. No one dared to provoke them. The Moonlit City players, who were proficient in PvP, could tell that this group of people didn't come with good intentions. Offending them wouldn't end well. Fortunately, everyone knew where these people were going. They watched them leave the city and step into the leveling area. When they looked again, they realized that they were going the wrong way. Of course, the Moonlit City players didn't know that the leveling area after level 50 was the Cloud City. They only thought about how spectacular it would be for 20,000 players to go the wrong way. Of course, the 20,000 players didn't go the wrong way. Moreover, they were walking in the shortest straight line between the 2 points. They ignored the leveling area at level 20, stepped on the leveling area at level 30, crushed the leveling area at level 40, and pushed the leveling area at level 50. Finally, they reached the leveling area at level 60. It wasn't that difficult. With such an advantage in numbers, normal mobs were nothing. They just didn't want to accidentally injure their own teammates. I think we should be on our way, right? In a certain city, the bosses of the gaming studios gathered together again. These days, they often gathered together. They looked like a family. No other guild was as close to them as they were. However, only they knew what was hidden behind this closeness. These days, everyone had already agreed that when the time came, they would personally go to Cloud City to watch the battle. After all, they had nothing better to do. On the surface, this was the case. However, in private, the gaming studios were actually moving their goods towards Cloud City. Even those that didn't have a business in Cloud City had sent people to set up stalls along the road. How many times could such a huge PvP battle happen in a game? It was rare. If they didn't take this chance, how could they live up to their reputation? Apart from this, the personal guards of the bosses also gathered at their respective locations. In Matchless Hero's words, it was likely that they would have to deal with 1,000 miles drunk themselves. That group of players was a mess, and who knew what would happen in the end? Those guys have already left Moonlit Night City for more than 2 hours. I think it's about time. Let's go, a boss suggested. Let's go, everyone answered and took out their scrolls. White light flashed and they arrived at Cloud City instantly. The scrolls were specially made at the same time, so of course, the teleportation point was also the same. Not only the bosses had arrived, but the bodyguards under each studio had also arrived and were waiting here quietly. Boss Guy, where's Chin-Chi? When everyone arrived, they looked around and realized that Chin-Chi wasn't there. However, he was already online, so they hurriedly asked, "We're here." As Matchless Hero spoke, there was a flash of white light, and Chin-Chi was teleported to the same location. The bosses naturally greeted him again. Chin-Chi's status was obviously different from the others. Who has been to Cloud City before? Lead the way. Someone said, "It should be this way." There really was someone who knew the way. "Won't we attract too much attention with so many of us?" said one of them. "Damn, even more attention is coming soon." "What are we?" Another person didn't seem to care. "You said it's very overpowered. Will we be trampled to the ground?" Another person said, "Damn, don't say such discouraging words. Won't it ruin business? I sent hundreds of pieces of equipment. More than 20,000 people. How can they fight? Mobilize the whole city." When that Qianli was drunk, he taught the efficient leveling method for free in the city. I don't know how many people he won over. But my people in Cloud City haven't seen such a situation these days. The bosses chatted along the way, as if they were discussing the plot before watching a movie. Outside the city gate, along the main road, they could gradually see what seemed to be dust flying in the distance. Matchless Hero suddenly felt relaxed and happy. "Look over there. It's already here. Say, Cloud City is going to be in chaos. Then you should be happy. Aren't you happy with my appearance?" While chatting, the bosses began to look for a place to watch the movie. They had found the army, but where were their opponents? Very overpowered? What about Qianli's drunk? No one knew where he was. The army had successfully crossed the level 60 leveling area and crushed their way along the level 50 leveling area. On the way, they occasionally saw some players who were leveling up. The army had come from afar. Even if they wanted to cause trouble for Cloud Peak City, they would have to go to a densely populated area. It wasn't worth it to take a detour to deal with such a small team, so they didn't pay any attention to these people. As they continued to move forward, they saw 3 solo players. At first, they didn't pay much attention, but after a few glances, someone finally exclaimed, "That's the level 50 efficient leveling method, right?" After the first exclamation, everyone turned to look at the other 3. This was especially true for the guild's elite experts. This was exactly what they needed, as they had high-quality equipment. Seems like it. After a closer look, everyone was more certain. Very overpowered? Some people guessed that Qianli's drunk was a very overpowered person, so he taught their masters the level 50 method. This was very reasonable. It can't be? He knows we're coming, but he's still leveling up here? Everyone couldn't believe it. They knew that their actions would definitely be spread to Cloud City. How would very overpowered respond? This was also what they had been guessing along the way. Would he run away in fear? They guessed this possibility, but they didn't care too much. Don't forget the purpose of coming here, it was to get back at them. What if very overpowered ran away? Running away could be considered as getting back at them. They could show off in Cloud City for a while and kill anyone who didn't agree with them. When that time came, they would be on the forum headlines, which would be a lot of face. But now, 3 players who seemed to be very overpowered ignored their expedition and were leveling up normally. This result was too hard to accept. "Let's go and take a look first," someone suggested. Okay. More than 20,000 people squirmed in the direction of the 3 players. As they got closer and closer, it was impossible for the 3 players not to notice. They suddenly stopped leveling up and ran away. Fuck! More than 20,000 people cursed in unison. What happened? What happened? Did they start fighting? This fuck spread far and wide. The bosses all heard it. They were still hurrying towards the direction of the dust. It wouldn't be good if they missed the show. More importantly, they gave some business instructions according to the situation. They couldn't let this rare battle go to waste. The bosses hurried forward. Finally, their line of sight wasn't just dust. They could already see the army of more than 20,000 moving. After the 3 players who seemed to be very overpowered disappeared, the army continued to advance in the leveling area. In the blink of an eye, they arrived at the leveling area of 40. The liveliness here was very different from the leveling area. Especially during the period of the new leveling method, it was overcrowded. Seeing so many people suddenly appear together, the players in the leveling area were obviously a little dumbfounded. The army finally waited for the scene they had been waiting for. They enjoyed it very much. With a command, the scolding began. "Very overpowered, get out here. Only find overpowered players. Make way for the other troublemakers." The army marched into the leveling area. They weren't very polite to the overpowered players, but they were still polite to the other players. They didn't want to aggravate the conflict with all the players in Cloud City right from the start. Although some of them thought that the strength of their 26 level 6 guilds was enough to fight against the players of a main city, no one had experienced a group battle of this scale before. Whether they could fight or not was just a guess. In the end, they decided not to start a fight right from the start. Even the players in the leveling area couldn't compare to this group of people. Moreover, the players who were paying attention to the gossip had already guessed who this group of people was. Even if they cursed in their hearts, they wouldn't stand in the limelight at this time and seek death. Moreover, they were only looking for overpowered players. They didn't attack or scold the other players. They only disturbed everyone's leveling. At this time, the bosses of the studios finally found this group of people. Unparalleled Wonder felt quite happy listening to the expeditionary army's scolding of the overpowered players in the leveling area. The other bosses didn't feel much. They only felt that the show hadn't started yet and were waiting anxiously. What do you guys think? Should we send some people over and provoke them a little? One of the bosses suggested. They wanted to be in the business of efficient leveling, so they couldn't miss this opportunity to make money from a war. With so many experts coming from afar, they felt that it would be a waste if they really only attacked 200 to 300 players. Don't panic, it's just the beginning. Let's get down to business first. Someone advised. In comparison, efficient leveling was more important. Where did all the overpowered players go? The bosses looked left and right, waiting for a good show. Over there, stop messing around. The overpowered players are over here. Suddenly, someone shouted in the wilderness. It was at the edge of the leveling area. Unfortunately, he was the only one who could hear him. The level 40 training area was already packed with players, so how could anyone hear him? Yutian Shenming saw that this shout was useless, so he simply drew his bow and fired a sniper shot. With a bang, a player was hit. The tens of thousands of players were simply too chaotic. No one had noticed Imperial Divine Cry's arrow, and only when the arrow pierced into their heads did they realize it. They angrily turned their heads to look, only to see an expert shouting something outside the leveling area, but they couldn't see the person clearly. This guy shouted twice, but now he was cursing in the street. Apart from the few people next to him, not many people heard him. This person hurriedly sent a message in the guild channel and sent a secret message to the guild leader. After much difficulty, everyone's gazes finally landed on the archer. Fuck, what is he shouting? There were tens of thousands of players in the leveling area, so it was impossible for them to calm down. The guy over there looked like a clown performing a pantomime. Chapter 943. Who's this guy? What's going on? It looked like he wanted to say something to them, but it was so chaotic that they couldn't hear him. The guild leaders had already ordered everyone to quiet down, but this was a leveling area. The monsters wouldn't stay quiet even if the players were quiet. Once they respawned, they would find themselves in the middle of the crowd. Of course, they would just kill randomly. The players couldn't die just for the sake of silence. They had to fight back. In the end, the voices stopped, but the sounds of battle continued. Send a few people over to take a look. The guild leaders and core members of the guilds were in the same team. This team channel was their core command channel. At this moment, someone suggested, could it be a trap? What kind of trap can there be with the support of 20,000 players? I've already sent people over. A few players ran out from the 20,000 players towards Yutian Shenming. Yutian Shenming jumped and shouted, but it was obvious that the other side didn't hear him. In the end, they only sent a few idiots towards him. Yutian Shenming couldn't be bothered to shout and directly shot another arrow. This attack was seen by everyone. Who would believe that this person was a friend? But this person actually dared to attack over 20,000 of them. He must be crazy. This time, someone was hit. It wasn't that Yutian Shenming's archery was superb. It was just that there were too many people. Even if he threw a brick into the crowd, he could still hit someone. The person who was hit was cursing his bad luck. Suddenly, he saw a ball of paper on the body of the arrow. He opened it and saw a few crooked words on it. Looking for a very overpowered person. Follow me. This person hurriedly reported the situation to the guild leader. The guild leader quickly took it out and discussed it in the command center. At the same time, a player in the level 40 training area provided them with a clue. That person is the overpowered Yutian Shenming. Fuck chase. Yutian Shenming had already turned around and was running. The guild leaders hurriedly gave the order to chase. With this shout, chaos immediately ensued. More than 20,000 people rushed forward at once, and there was a stampede. The shouts couldn't be heard by others. They hurriedly sent the message in the guild channel. The guild leaders wiped their sweat and hurriedly shouted, "Stop. Let's distribute them first." All of the guild leaders gave the order to move the teams of the various guilds. They no longer maintained the 20,000 players that seemed to be won. This was because players simply didn't have the ability to command tens of thousands of players. Most people would only be able to command a dozen or so people. The more powerful ones would be able to command 100 or so people. If the guild leader were to command 1,000 people by himself, not many people would be able to do it. This was a talent for military command. How many players could there be? Even if he found someone who could match his expertise, would he hand over the authority to command the guild? Not many of them were willing. The guild leader's goal was to command the guild from top to bottom. Now that the guild had been formed and the interesting areas were left to others, what was the guild leader's goal? Even if you don't usually give in, if you give in at a critical moment, wouldn't that make it seem like the president has no standards? Everyone knew that there was a way to solve this problem, but no one was willing to do it. Reality was very contradictory. At this moment, it looked like a battle was about to break out. They could no longer stand wherever they liked like a tourist group. All of the guild leaders gathered their people and distributed them according to the usual way of leading a team. The 20,000 players were quickly divided into 26 teams. Each of the 26 teams had their own way of splitting up. Although it was more scattered than before, it was clearly more orderly. Yutian Shenming had already run a distance away, but the people behind him couldn't catch up. They could only stop and wait. When the other guilds saw this, they felt that it was too fucking obvious. They were waiting for them to chase. What kind of trap was this? The command center immediately began to actively discuss. Experienced people like Wind and Frost actively explained that it was very overpowered. It was possible that they would mobilize more than just a few hundred people, so they couldn't let their guard down just because they had more people. What about now? He's just one person. Should we chase him or not? We don't even dare to chase him. What a joke. Someone said, we have to chase him, but we have to do it strategically. Look at how patient he is. It's like he's afraid of leaving us behind. He's going in this direction. It looks like he's going to enter the city, right? That's right, enter the city. Someone suddenly interrupted. Look, this is their trap. If we fight in the streets of the main city, our advantage in numbers will be somewhat limited. Then, they will use their familiarity with the terrain to divide and surround us. Fuck, we'll have to enter the city sooner or later. If entering the city is also a fatal trap, I'll accept it. The guild leaders and core members were all talking at once. They couldn't come to a consensus. This was an unavoidable problem in a temporary army. Yutian Shenming couldn't stand the loneliness of waiting and fired another arrow. This time, the arrow was blocked by the heavy warrior. There was another ball of paper on the arrow. The warrior opened it and saw the words, "Where's the dick?" This news caused another uproar when it was relayed to the guild leaders. The cautious ones said that this was a provocation and a further lure. The hot-blooded ones wanted nothing more than to immediately lead their troops and trample this arrogant brat to death. What's with the noise? Let's sneak a few thieves over and kill this brat, a guild leader suggested. This was the first time a suggestion in the expeditionary army had been unanimously approved. Every guild leader sent an assassin to sneak in the direction of Yutian Shenming. Before they arrived, Yutian Shenming turned around and left. Everyone was stunned. What happened? Wasn't he going to wait for them? Why did he suddenly leave? Should we chase him? Someone asked. But this was the question that everyone had been discussing all this time. If there was a conclusion, would it have come to this? Therefore, the final suggestion that was approved was, let's wait and see. As they watched, Yutian Shenming's figure disappeared, completely out of sight. All the guild leaders were speechless. The 26,000 players from the 26 guilds were also speechless. What's going on? Someone was trying to figure out why Yutian Shenming suddenly turned around and left without waiting for them. I don't think we need to be so cautious. An impulsive guild leader expressed his dissatisfaction. Shouldn't we be cautious? Look, that brat clearly wants us to go with him. If it's not a trap, why did he ask us to go? Then why did he suddenly leave? He felt that we wouldn't fall for it, so he left. Send a scouting team into the city to investigate. The main force will wait here. All right. Once again, the proposal was unanimously approved. All the guild leaders sent scouting teams into Cloud Peak City to conduct a comprehensive investigation to see if there were any traps, or arrangements. I say, everyone, we can't do this. I think we need a unified commander, someone suggested. The guild leaders fell silent. In fact, they had discussed this problem before, but they weren't familiar with each other and didn't know who to choose. In the end, they used the excuse of, "Let's wait and see." Everyone wanted to come to Cloud City to see if there was a need to choose this character. Maybe it would be easy to settle everything here? In the end, just one person had caused them to be in such a mess. It was really necessary to have a unified command. If we really choose, will everyone obey unconditionally? For example, just now, if I was the commander, there would only be one word: chase. Will you chase? We can chase, but we have to do it strategically. I'll go. The situation was special. This wasn't like Wind and Frost's team. After all, they weren't the guild leaders and usually accepted commands. But what about these people? Most of them were used to giving orders, but they weren't used to listening to others unconditionally. Moreover, they didn't know each other. Who would listen to who? If we don't choose a commander, should we clear out the team channel first? The more people there are, the more chaotic it will be. Each guild should just leave one person, someone suggested. No one objected to this suggestion. In the end, the commander team would be streamlined. Who else would be left behind? It would be the guild leader. Then, let's not continue piling up like this. This is too passive. Let's take the initiative and split up a portion of the team. Then, we'll go to the leveling area. Don't worry about whether or not there are any OP players. We have to do this. Don't forget what we came here for. As for the others, I suggest splitting into 4 teams. Doesn't Cloud City have 4 gates? Let's block them all. We have to do something. Okay, that's reasonable. Everyone nodded. Just as they were about to split up, they suddenly received a message. It was from the player who had just been sent out to scout. That kid has returned. Which one? The OP one, Yutian Shenming. The scout in front was advancing towards Cloud City when he saw this Yutian Shenming return from the direction of the main city. He immediately reported to the team. What the hell? The guild leaders were confused. Kill him? Don't panic. He's floating outside now. We can kill him whenever we want. Wait for him to come back and see what he's up to. Thus, the guild leader ordered the scouts to keep an eye on this person, but not to make a move. The army of 26,000 waited quietly. Finally, they saw Yutian Shenming's figure. His movement speed was very fast. If he was placed in any of the 26 guilds, he wouldn't be bad. As expected of an expert on the leaderboard. No one moved. No one even spoke. The scene was surprisingly quiet. Yutian Shenming approached. When he saw the situation, he was a little confused. After a slight hesitation, he took down his bow and loaded an arrow. An arrow flew over. It was still the same arrow with a small ball on it. The person who picked it up quickly opened it. On the paper was written, "No more paper. Does anyone recognize me? Send me a message." The message was relayed to the guild leaders. After being stunned for a moment, the guild leaders burst into tears. Now, it seemed that the whole thing had some ideas. This kid came over to say something. He didn't dare to come closer because he knew that they didn't come with good intentions. So he shouted, but it was too noisy and couldn't be heard. So he wrote on the paper and shot it over. Everyone chased after it and became suspicious. This kid probably saw through it. He wanted to explain, but when he touched his pocket, he ran out of paper. So he went back to the city to find paper. What was going on? Could they be more serious? Weren't they here to play? Chapter 944. Yutian Shenming had something to say. Everyone finally understood what he meant. The guild leaders ordered silence in the channel. Since there were no monsters to harass them, everyone shut up and the scene immediately quieted down. Yutian Shenming was only a few dozen meters away from them. He could definitely hear what they shouted. Yutian Shenming understood when he saw the enemy's formation. He immediately shouted, "The tallest clock tower in the city is waiting for you." He shouted these words 3 times in a row, and the imperial divine cry flashed with white light and disappeared. One of the guild leaders was furious. Fuck, who did it? But when he looked again, something was wrong. If someone did it, the thief in stealth should have come out. There was obviously no one there. The scout also sent back a message in time. They didn't do it. The person teleported after shouting. Although he left, the majority of the guild leaders heard his 3 sentences. The 26 guild leaders naturally started a new round of emergency discussion. The problem of the discussion made everyone cry. It was the old question of whether to enter or not. What clock tower is he talking about? What kind of place is that? Someone asked. I have a map here. Everyone, come and take a look. A meticulous guild leader specially made a map of Cloud City before the expedition. Although they shouldn't have a map of Cloud City for sale, as long as they had a workshop, it wouldn't be a problem. Cloud City was right in front of them, but the guild leaders were a little confused after the enemy made such a ruckus. The 26 gathered under the city and started to study the so-called tallest clock tower. It's here, right? The owner of the map had been looking at it for a long time. He had already pointed to the place. It's open all around here. There's no way to set up an ambush here, someone said while looking at the terrain. Yes. Moreover, this kind of open space is more beneficial for us with so many people. The surrounding streets can't form an effective blockade against us either. There are too many streets. How can they have so many elite players? Everyone spoke one after another. In the end, they came to a consensus. The location of the clock tower wasn't the kind of place to set up an ambush. There wouldn't be any tricks here. So it's still on the route to this clock tower? Everyone guessed and continued to study. Here. 26 fingers were pointing and drawing on the map, discussing the various possibilities. There were only 4 gates that one had to pass through in order to enter the city. After that, the route to any point in the main city from the 4 gates was ever-changing. Some were near, some were far, and some were about the same. How could one count them clearly? Moreover, on this map, the street entrances and the like were drawn, but the exact shape of the street was still unknown. After some discussion, the final decision was to send scouts into the city to gather information. Therefore, everyone looked back. Whether Yutian Shenming came back or not, these 3 shouts didn't affect their decision at all. With this shout, they had a target to focus on for scouting. 26 guilds waited anxiously outside the city for news. The bosses of the major studios who had come to watch the show were waiting anxiously for their news. What they hoped for the most was to mobilize all the players in the city to fight against the enemy, but now that the enemy was at the gates of the city, no one in Cloud City was mobilizing in this regard. The players in Cloud City, at this time, only took these guys coming from afar to seek revenge as a topic of conversation. They were as curious as the bosses of the studios about how to deal with the OP. The bosses were really anxious. They even wanted to help the OP to mobilize the masses. They had already done the preparation work in this regard. It was the work of inciting the masses, which was also their strength. While the 26 guild leaders were discussing nervously, the bosses were not idle either. This show was too confusing, and it was really sad. Seeing that the expeditionary army was suspicious and did not dare to enter the city, the bosses really wanted to inform them. The city was calm, unbelievably calm, and very OP seemed to be unprepared at all. At this moment, the 26 guild leaders sent out scouts, but the bosses also sent out their subordinates. But the place they sent people to was very clear. It was the clock tower. They already knew about Yu Tianshiming's shouts just now. What was so mysterious about this place? The bosses were also very curious. After all, the people of the studios were more permeable, and it was faster to do this kind of work. They didn't need to put on makeup or sneak, they just strolled around like ordinary people. The people of the bosses near the clock tower all went there. It was normal, extremely normal. It was the same as usual in this area today. Then, a subordinate who studied further reported, there were people on the clock tower, and they seemed to be very OP. What were they doing? While the bosses were still very curious about this question, the 26 armies had already begun to move. After all, their scouts were not slow, and they were rich in experience, so they quickly determined that there was no ambush after entering the city. Although the 26 guild leaders still had doubts, it was indeed a bit useless to keep squatting at the city gate. They immediately ordered to enter the city together. 26 guilds, more than 26,000 people, squeezing into one gate at a time would also take some time, and the 26 guild leaders were very modest about which guild would go first. In the end, they decided to mix the teams, and then they started to enter the city. Once they entered the city, the entire road was filled with their people, and the players of Cloud City could only retreat to the sides. This mutual hostility was more or less unavoidable, but the hostility of the players of Cloud City stopped at their gazes, and the hostility of the 26 guilds stopped at their secret vigilance. The army advanced all the way, so smoothly that the guild leaders were a bit confused. This was very OP. Was there no preparation at all? No ambush at all? Why did they invite them to some clock tower? What were they trying to do? To start a bloody battle at that place? But in that case, wouldn't it be better to directly go outside the city? At this time, the scouts had already gone to the clock tower and carefully studied the surrounding area, and there was indeed no ambush. The 26 guild leaders even had some doubts that the people were all in the houses. But to ambush them with more than 20,000 people, how many houses would it take to hide them? They couldn't be sure about the people, but it was impossible to have so many houses. Even if it was the city district that was awarded to the guild from the city war, that property wasn't freely used by the guild players. At this time, the scout in front suddenly reported that there was a banner hanging on the clock tower. What banner? Welcome to the guild leaders of the main cities for your guidance, the scout reported. The 26 guild leaders were speechless in the channel. What was this situation? At the same time, the bosses of the studios also received this news, and they were also full of suspicion. But they were still outside the city and couldn't enter for the time being. It was a team of 26,000 people entering the city. It was quite large, and the boss tour group was delayed outside the city. What are these guys doing? Many of the guild leaders were worried. We've checked all around, there's no problem at all. What can a small clock tower do? With so many of us, we can even push it down. Forward. I want to see what kind of tricks these guys are playing today, a guild leader said in an imposing manner. After hearing this, the other guild leaders felt that it was reasonable, so they ordered the team to advance. After a moment, the vanguard team had reached the area around the clock tower, but they didn't act rashly, waiting for the follow-up team to advance together. There were more than 20,000 people, and although the area around the clock tower was spacious, it wasn't enough for all of them to stand together. In the end, the ones who could advance were naturally the guild leaders and the elite brains. Everyone circled the clock tower twice, but they couldn't see anything. They saw that the large banner went straight down from the top of the clock tower, and at this time, it was fluttering in the wind, so much so that the words on it couldn't be seen clearly. Clearly, the other party didn't put much effort into this banner. There wasn't anything heavy at the bottom, and yet it could be swept up by the wind like this. Everyone looked at each other, then at the dark stone door of the clock tower in front of them. What was hidden inside? Let's find a few heavy armored warriors to go in and take a look, a guild leader suggested. Everyone nodded. This scouting was different from before. The probability of danger was very high, and if they sent a thief, they might be instantly killed in a wave of attacks. The heavy armored warriors could withstand any kind of attack, and then stand behind 2 rows of priests to heal them. After understanding the situation, they would retreat and there wouldn't be any major problems. Archer mages, pay attention to the high ground. The guild leaders noticed that there were windows on every floor of the clock tower, and they couldn't be sure what kind of attack was coming from there. The heavy armored warriors in charge of scouting had already stepped forward, and they all volunteered. In the end, 4 were chosen, and each of them had high HP and thick skin, and they were all the elites of their respective guilds. At this time, showing their faces in front of 26,000 people, these 4 brothers weren't nervous at all. They were all quite proud, and very wickedly hoped that after they were attacked, the other 3 would die, and only they would survive. Wouldn't that make them even more awesome? The 4 warriors each asked for their guild leader's instructions, and after exchanging glances, they raised their shields to protect their heads and entered the clock tower. The huge venue suddenly quieted down. Was it a demon or a ghost that entered through this door? Everyone was sweating, quietly watching these 4 strongest brothers step in with their shields up. In that instant, the priests had already started healing, regardless of whether they saw the attack or not. As expected, The 4 warriors who entered the bell tower immediately heard the commotion. However, they were already mentally prepared. With the priests already at work, they believed that they could withstand any attack in the game. Therefore, they calmly raised their heads and looked toward the direction where the commotion was coming from. There was a loud bang, accompanied by flying dust and gravel. The players standing in front of the clock tower saw a round shield roll out of the dust, and the priests had long since lost their target of healing. The dust dissipated quickly, and the entrance of the clock tower was blocked by a pile of rocks. Under the pile of rocks, a stubborn, unyielding hand struggled to reach out. The priests were stunned, and one of them waved his staff as if trying to help the hand. Suddenly, a white light flashed and the hand disappeared. There was another bang, and the pile of rocks sank, instantly filling up the empty space left by the warriors who had been killed. Chapter 945. The 26 guild leaders were all standing in the best viewing position in front of the clock tower. They had seen the entire process in detail, but they were all tongue-tied, unable to speak for a long time. It wasn't until the dust had completely settled that the priests standing a little further in front of their guild leaders turned around and stared blankly at them. Only then did the guild leaders regain their senses. "Fuck, what happened?" A guild leader was the first to shout. He had already received the news that the warrior he sent out was dead. This guild leader didn't hide anything. The warrior he sent out was their guild's top tank. He was known to never know what instant kill was, but in the end he was buried under a pile of rubble. It seemed like he had been instantly killed. Was it done by someone or something? A guild leader was still confused. "Of course. It must be those guys doing," someone said. "Does being stoned to death count as PK points?" "Fuck, I've never tried it before." The guild leaders had a good viewing angle, so they could see everything clearly. However, it wasn't just the 26 of them who were discussing this. Those who saw and heard were all discussing it. The area around the clock tower was buzzing. Not long after, there were rumors that the clock tower was going to collapse and everyone in the plaza was going to be buried, making everyone anxious. The guild leaders were busy comforting the crowd in the chat, telling everyone that their brothers who went in to check were ambushed by the enemy. At the same time, they were urgently discussing the situation. "He's dead, and the tower is blocked. Their people might be up there, but we can't go up. How many people can this clock tower hold?" Someone looked up. The clock tower of Cloud City was extremely tall. It was said that standing at the top was like standing in the clouds. Of course, this was an exaggeration. It was just that the height of the clock tower made people feel exceptionally close to the clouds. Although the game was a fantasy, it wasn't easy to build a clock tower that pierced through the clouds in a normal city. After gauging the height, the guild leaders all felt that this clock tower was really tall. It was so tall that they couldn't tell how many people it could hold. "Let's go take a look at those rocks," a guild leader suggested. Could it be a trap? Someone continued to look up. Along the way up the clock tower, there were many openings. It seemed that one could casually throw a rock like this out. If one would really throw it out. The man looked back at the crowd around him and shuddered. That would really be a tragedy. It's better to be careful. Thinking back to the 4 brothers who had been buried alive, in terms of survivability and defense, they wouldn't be any weaker in this parallel world. Yet they all ended up like this. Wouldn't those weak mages, bandits, and the like die with a single hit? These fellows, don't tell me they want to defend this place and drag it out with us? Suddenly, the guild leader realized something. Damn, that seems a little troublesome. The president walked around the clock tower. There was indeed only one entrance, and the lowest window was more than 10 meters high. Without tools, it was impossible to climb up. Even if there were tools, the window was easier to guard than the door. You could climb up with a ladder and have someone push it. In any case, send someone to get some tools first. Everyone else, continue to observe, the guild leaders decided after a discussion. However, they weren't familiar with Cloud City. If they wanted to climb up the clock tower from the window, they would have to use large tools like ladders. These things couldn't be stored in a pocket or mailbox, so they could only solve it on the spot. Thus, some of them went to ask if there were any workshops in Cloud City that could do this, while others went outside the city to prepare their own ladders. The people from the 26 guilds gathered here, filling up the plaza and streets of this place. Even if the players of Cloud City wanted to watch the show, they couldn't squeeze in. The bosses of the studios who came from afar to watch the show were also in a tragedy. They couldn't even get close to the clock tower. They were all walking around outside, completely unaware of what was happening inside. Guild leader, I'll go take a look. Just as the guild leaders were hesitating about what to do next, quite a few people from the various guilds volunteered to take up the task. These were the more impatient fellows. They had been waiting outside the city, but now that they had entered the city, they were waiting again. They were so impatient that they decided to muster up their courage and go take a look. The guild leaders only felt that it was dangerous, so they were too embarrassed to give this order. Of course, it couldn't be better if there were people volunteering. They immediately agreed. Then, when they went back, everyone agreed. Suddenly, dozens of people squeezed out from the various guilds. Not so many. If there are so many of us going up, one stone will smash a whole group to death. It's best if there are only a few of us going up. At least there will be a place to hide, right? A guild leader hurriedly said. Everyone agreed, so this time, they didn't choose strong people, only fast ones. Suddenly, an idea popped into his head. The tower was completely blocked, and the window above was so high up. Even an anti-stealth skill wouldn't be able to cover such a large area. He could just use a thief to sneak in and study it. What was there to worry about? Thus, this time, they finally chose 4 thieves. They immediately went into stealth and quietly touched the entrance that was buried by the stone. They looked left and right, nodded in unison, and reported back, "It's a stone." Nonsense, it can't be a hidden weapon. A guild leader rolled his eyes. Touch it. The 4 brothers discussed among themselves. Touch it, one of them said firmly. Touching it was dangerous because if they touched it, they would be exposed. After the 4 thieves reported this fearless action to their leader, the leader took it very seriously. He hurriedly mobilized the archers and other long-range attackers, pointing at the 3 upper windows at the entrance. Keep a close eye on it. If there's any movement, immediately attack. Understood. The attackers were ready to attack. After the 4 thieves received the order to start looting, the team counted 1, 2, 3, and stretched out their hands. As soon as their hands touched the stone, the thief's figure immediately appeared. Some of the long-range attackers couldn't hold back anymore, regardless of whether there was any movement at the window or not, and immediately opened fire. When someone started, the others immediately thought that their eyesight was bad and they didn't see anything, so they hurriedly followed. In an instant, arrows flew like rain, and flames soared into the sky. The attacks were like a rainbow, directly crossing over the 3 windows. Everyone was instantly confused. They couldn't see what was happening at the window because the attacks were too dense and completely blocked. At this time, the 4 thieves had also safely touched the stone. They tried to move it, but the stone was stuck too tightly, and the 4 of them could only shake it a little. While the 4 of them were busy, they were also paying attention to the sky above them. In just a second, they saw many arrows hit the frame of the window and fell down. Along with the arrows were sparks and sparks from the collision of the Magi's fire magic. There were also sporadic ice shards and lightning sparks. It was a unique skill of some Magi. Where would they fall? Weren't they the 4 brothers? The 4 saw that the attack was so fierce, and if they didn't run, they would be buried by the arrows. They immediately hugged their heads and ran back. The arrows fell, and indeed, in an instant, the pile of stones was covered with a layer of stone. The guild leaders looked at each other, feeling that this was a bit too much. The guild leaders all shouted in the guild channel to stop, and the attacks gradually stopped. The group of archers really didn't save their arrows at all, and there was a pile of arrows at the bottom of the clock tower. What's the situation? The guild leaders were now interrogating the 4 thieves. Nothing much, just ordinary stones. They're piled up there now, and it might take some effort to move them away. The thief explained. It's not a big deal to move them away, but the key is, Will the people inside continue to throw them down after we move them away? The second thief said, how many of these stones can be placed in this clock tower? The third thief said. Everyone looked up at the same time. This question seemed to be a bit similar to the previous question, but the people were replaced with stones. The clock tower was so tall, no matter how many people or stones it could hold, it couldn't be estimated. Everyone thought in their hearts. Just as they were discussing the next step, someone suddenly shouted, there's someone. The guild leaders didn't have time to look up at this legendary person before they saw the rainbow bridge being built together again. But this time, it was even more explosive than the last time. Last time, at least many windows were attacked, but this time, it was concentrated in one place. Then the window will be blocked. Anyone who saw this scene would inevitably have such a thought. Looking at the long and thick long-range attack that everyone had gathered together, the guild leaders could not help but shed silent tears. How was this an attack? This was clearly adding to the blockage. Look at the falling arrows. The stones had buried the entrance of the clock tower, and now the arrows were going to bury the pile of stones. The guild leaders shouted again, and in the end, they repeatedly warned, fire only when you hear the order, don't be so proactive. The attack stopped again, and the window was silent. The legendary person still hadn't been seen, and they didn't know if he was dead or not. But from the situation reported by the guild leaders, it was obvious that he wasn't, because no one had PK points. Don't attack without orders. This order was repeated by all the guild leaders. They wanted to see what the other party was going to do. The guild leaders had already found the brother who shouted, there's someone, just now to confirm that he wasn't seeing things, and that someone had really appeared at the window just now. It's here again. With a shout, everyone looked up and saw a figure appear at a certain window. Compared to the last time, the window had changed again. The guild leaders reminded again in the channel, don't fire first, while thinking to themselves, is this a fucking game of whack-a-mole or what? There's even a change in the hole? The windows of the clock tower were all made of stone, and there were no windows. This person stepped on the windowsill, drilled half of his body out, and looked around from above. His hand reached out from behind, grabbed something, and brought it in front of him. The people below the clock tower were all shocked, thinking that it was some kind of lethal weapon. The archer's hands twitched, and they almost released another arrow. At this time, it was clear that he was worthy of being a guild leader. After all, he was calmer than the average person, and they didn't even bother to see what the guy took out. That thing was just a paper trumpet, but it was a little exaggerated. At this time, the person brought the paper trumpet to his mouth as if there was no one else around, and shouted to the people below the clock tower, all of you, quiet down and listen to me. It was just a paper trumpet. It could produce sound, but it couldn't be amplified. Compared to the noise made by more than 20,000 people, it was weak, too weak. But it was still the guild leaders. When they saw the person take out this thing, they knew that he was about to speak, and they hurriedly got everyone to quiet down. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.